Hello there. Welcome in. Drive time on ESPN 700. Spence Checketts out once again this afternoon. I am Porter Larson, the usual host, producer of this here program, rather. In the studio with us today, one Trevor Reilly, the former Ute, the former NFL linebacker. Plenty for us to get to on this Wednesday afternoon. A happy hump day to you, halfway through the work week, halfway closer to the weekend. And it's a pleasure to have you guys alongside us today. Trevor Reilly, how are you, my friend?
This is a nice seat.
I was going to say, you're in the air chair today.
What a good setup, man.
I'm running the show behind the glass. But as always good to see your face. Always good to hear from you.
Absolutely, and likewise.
I think it's obvious what we'll talk about on the show for the most part today. A lot of Utah football. We'll get to some NFL stuff, Week 3 action. Look ahead to Week 4. We, of course, your home of NFL football Monday nights, Thursday nights, and on the weekends every once in a while also. So we'll talk some NFL football. We'll talk some Utah football. We'll talk some college football at large. Sammy Mora of Ute Zone stops by the program. Chris Kamrani of The Athletic will stop by the program. We'll have a chat with Coach Bill Bush. He's been all over college football. We'll chat with him. We'll hear from Scott Mitchell, former NFL QB, current color broadcaster on the Utes game day broadcast on the network side. At 6 o'clock, Kyle Whittingham's Coaches Show from last night. If you missed that, each and every Tuesday, of course, live right after the drive. But if you missed it yesterday, and if you happen to catch the podcast that I accidentally put up that was last week's version, that's updated, by the way. You can head over to our podcast space to get the latest version of the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show, or just wait until 6 p.m. right here on the airwaves of ESPN 700. The first segment of the drive brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Head over to Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700. They'll match your initial deposit up to $50. And, of course, Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Trevor Reilly. The Utes are 3-1. A loss to Texas Tech. Naturally, you're in studio. You're a guy who is a former Ute and a former Texas Tech commit, right?
That's right.
Were you a hard commit?
I was.
Signed?
I signed, dude. Class of 06.
Okay.
I went on a mission, and then Leach and them boys won 11 games. They didn't give him an extension. So I kind of figured he wasn't going to be there long. I got back. And
there was some drama there?
A little bit. The next year he shoved the kid in the closet.
I was going to say,
he didn't. I mean, he kid had concussions. Anyway, so... Yeah, I was a Red Raider, dude. I've been to Lubbock a few times.
He wanted to get him out of the light. Is that what they were saying? Because he had concussions.
Craig James' son. I wasn't there, but I just from what I hear and I heard, from Leach, rest in peace, from Leach's mouth.
Hey, yeah, we can talk about it now.
Yeah, Leach, okay.
No disrespect to Mike. Okay, he's a character enough.
Mike Leach and I spent, when I was gonna go, I was trying to figure out where I was gonna go when I was 16 years old. My uncle takes me to a rugby tournament at Cal Berkeley. And his college rugby team is Mike Leach. So I give him my DVD. Hey, check this out. He watches that night, comes back and says, I like you. I'm offering you. He offers me there on the spot. And so we hung out for the weekend. I hung out with Mike Leach at 16, 17 years old, a weekend at Cal Berkeley. This is probably 05. And then we stayed in touch, obviously, through my mission. And then even after we stayed in touch. And Mike just, if I remember what he said about it, the whole situation, it wasn't as serious as the kid said it was. The kid was complaining a lot. I put him in a dark room. The point being is that I was very happy with Utah initially in the game. Texas Tech is good, but the ghost of Mike Leach showed up. That's what I'll tell you. He was there, right? Don't you think?
Yeah. That program had I'll say an energy that I haven't seen around them in a long time. Now we have to talk about part of the reason for that, which is an influx of a lot of money, a lot of oil and energy money from a guy named Cody Campbell down there in Lubbock. He played for Mike Leach. So he played a little offensive line down there, and you can kind of tell that it's a former offensive lineman doing the funding because the players they went out and got, man, it's not like Mr. Morton is a big name. It's not like they went out and got the top quarterback on the market. they spent money on the interior and they spent money on the defensive line.
You could
it
tell.
showed, right?
You could definitely tell, And the quarterback, the freshman they got, let me tell you what now, he looked like the real deal, 15.
The one that came in, yeah.
I mean, I was kind of sad when 2 went out. Wasn't that? I mean, that was kind of an ugly play, and then all of a sudden, it's the old Thurman Thomas, Barry Sanders story in our little world, okay? But you don't want the backup to come in and whoop you, and that's what happened. It was kind of an interesting story there.
I thought a really good football up until that early in the fourth quarter. It was 13-10. It was a pretty good back and forth game. Utah, man, they had a couple chances that they really, really ill-timed penalties and mistakes on Utah's part that turned that into a blowout there in the fourth quarter. But I don't
like seeing that, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't like seeing the defense quit. I'm a former Utah defenseman, and so that was a little disheartening. I'm sure they're going to catch heat for that. I agree with your point, though. The game was a tough game, and they're good. They're going to be top 10 most likely. All things stay healthy. They look like a top 10. They got speed, they got size, and they got 2 quarterbacks. So they could be really. I mean, they could be really, really good. We looked a little bit disorganized in the fourth quarter. I would say the game was going okay-ish. Right, we were a 1-score game against a top 25 team going into the fourth quarter at home, and. To my point earlier, quitting on defense is not an option. Never. So that's something. I don't know. That kind of happened last year a little bit, right? At the end of the season. Quarterbacks were out of the picture. And
Kyle kind of intimated to that. It felt at times a little bit like last year, right? Devin was struggling, and we're going to get into this as well. The Trevor Big 12 availability report.
Oh, yeah, the injury report.
The language, and listen, it's the Big 12 availability report.
Right, you're right.
The language is very clear here. And, of course, Kyle Whittingham, listen, it's not like he's trying to act in bad faith, but if you give him an inch, Kyle's going to use it. And this is something that I don't think we should have been surprised about. It's something that we talked about preseason, how the availability report would actually look. And listen, Devin Dampier was never questionable. There was a 100% chance he was going to play in that game outside of something happening on game day morning or something of the like. And for that reason, he never showed up on the availability report. People in Las Vegas, people in Lubbock, people in Provo, some in Salt Lake weren't stoked about that because they want to know what's going on. I get it. I understand. We're trying to get you inside information. That's part of the job here. Devin was always going to play, so he never appeared on the availability report.
Yep.
Some people are betting. Some people are trying to plan their weekend. Creates a little bit of a backlash. It ain't Kyle's job. Sorry. It's kind of my take with it. And until the Big 12 makes him do something else, you're gonna see that, right? I wonder what the answer was. They released a statement and kind of gave some clarity. I don't know that the Utes would have released a statement if the Big 12 didn't say anything. So I do wonder what that looks like. But again, if you're going to ask something of these coaches as far as availability report and injury report, and ask them to go and do math now on how probable these guys are after every Thursday practice, after every Friday practice, and then again on Friday morning or on Saturday game day morning, there's a lot of guys that I know that are football coaches that are not going to necessarily go out of their way to do that part of it. And that's not necessarily acting in bad faith. That's just kind of a weird ask on the Big 12's report. Now, the Utes have talked about it's the training staff. They're going to handle it in and out. Give us in and out. It's an interesting one, Trevor. I wonder how you feel about the availability report seeping into college football.
Well, it's inevitable. You can't pay players and not have accountability. It's the same reason why I don't mind calling kids out now by number, by name. You're on salary, dude. You got our hopes and dreams with you. Now we got to hold you to account. You're no longer an amateur. And so this is pro sports, and in pro sports you have certain requirements. And so it's just scaling. I'm still waiting for them to change all the rules. I don't know why we're not playing a uniform game here with the NFL here. All right, we're getting closer. But kickoff, really? We're still doing this?
See, I guess I'm a little bit of a traditionalist here. I hate that we're taking away parts of the game to suit the television show and to get more commercials in.
It's safer. I had a couple dingers, right, on that kickoff
You're-
team. I can
you're-
tell you right now.
okay.
It's a little bit safer doing this new way.
Can I also ask, though, Trevor, would you have had as much of an NFL career if it weren't for special teams?
Well, I can tell you this. I would have played longer if we would have had this kickoff because I was the best kickoff man.
This is
I
fair.
retired.
I
had
see
tackles every game,
what I'm
dude.
saying?
I was feeling real good about myself. Then I see what they're doing now. I would have killed this. This is hand-to-hand combat, dude. You don't even got to run.
I don't know, man. I understand a lot of it, and especially when we're talking about concussions, we're talking about the CTE. The kickoff thing to me is one of those ways. But then I look at guys like Britton Covey, right? I look at guys that they make a career out of part of the game. Devin Hester is going to be a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah. He might already be in.
And
didn't he get in? Did he get in? Maybe he didn't get in. I thought he got in.
well, we're going to talk some Hall of Fame here later in the show. But a guy like that may not really exist in 5 years as far as football goes. And that, I don't know. That to me is a little sad.
Well, I think that if they can make the rules more likable, who the hell wants to watch somebody kick it out of the back of the end zone 5 times a game? And we're at elevation here. We're going to see it every week. Why even do the play?
Right.
So there's some of that. Then there's the injuries, and then there's like, well, nobody likes it anyway.
Well, you gotta stop the game to get another commercial
Come
in.
on, man.
You gotta slow things down on the replay to get another commercial in.
I just think when I was in, I got a dose of no kickoff team in the AAF. You remember the Salt Lake Stallions? We didn't have kickoff.
Rest in peace, Salt Lake Stallions.
Rest in peace, Charlie Ebersol. Thanks for that one, big dog. 25-yard line. All right. If you wanted to go for an onside kick, it's 4th and 15.
Uh-huh.
Those are cool rules that you can do. The NFL is doing something cool. I'm just saying college football is somehow behind now. It's now the NFL is innovating. That's usually has not been the case in the last 50 years. Is college football usually ahead? So that's interesting.
It is. And sometimes I think that, usually you see stuff in college, in high school, and prep stuff before the NFL. The NFL seems to be the ones that are deciding some of the stuff in NFL preemptively, right? In football, rather. Tush push.
Yeah, man.
For me, stop it. Like, now here's where there's some nuance here. You've seen over the last couple of weeks people really go in slow-mo and looking and seeing that the Eagles are jumping off sides a little bit. They're getting a little bit of a head start on some of these. Call it correctly. You have to call a false start if they're if they're encroaching on the offensive side. You still have to apply the rules of football. But to me, a lot of the argument against it is just not being able to stop a pretty straightforward power play. Trevor, Reilly, what say you?
No doubt about that. I like it. And the reason why, it allows for the throwback, and it's not as dangerous as people think. It's a scrum.
I haven't seen it result in injuries much. Have you?
I think a quarterback's got a dinger here or there. It's probably a guy rolled an ankle here or there. But I would say that they're not fast-moving plays usually. There's not a lot of velocity in a scrum. Also, punching somebody in the face has always been a hallmark of pro football. And if you take that away, we like violence a little bit.
Right.
So let's just line up and mash each other in the face for about 5 seconds, 5 times. It's not a bad thing.
Now there was
tougher.
And there's a time when it's like assisting the runner, pulling the runner forward. I understand taking some of that out of the game, but when you're just lining up in a power formation and going at a defense, getting leverage, getting low and trying to get 6 inches a yard, that's football to me. That's like almost the epitome of football. I don't know if you saw the Buccaneers are playing Eagles this week. They just signed old Desmond Watson, that kid from Florida.
He's about 450.
Maybe a little more. He didn't make their team during the offseason. He didn't make their team going into his rookie year, but they brought him back for this week. I wonder if he's elevated because at this point, man, if a team is doing something and it's working and it keeps working and they're not breaking any rules, find a way to stop it. And if that means you have a 400, 500-pounder in the middle, maybe that's part of the recipe. I don't know.
Well, there's also a thing. You could figure out a way to just beat it, okay? So sometimes on the D-line, this is what I used to teach. This isn't scripture. This is my version of how to play defensive line. Back off the ball 3 to 6 inches. I know that sounds blasphemy. It's blasphemy. You might get some better leverage. If you get too tight into a lineman, they can grab you.
Well, especially if as we're seeing, Philly's moving you can tell it's on Jalen's cadence rather than the ball.
Absolutely.
Because they're a lot of times moving at the snap or a little bit before.
I'll match that cadence from depth. I know. I mean, there's just you got to figure it out. It's great thing about football is it's like a chess game.
Mm-hmm.
You have a move, and then you got to wait. You have a 4-second, 5-second play, and then you wait 40 seconds. Very unique game in that way, but very much like chess. And in chess, they don't say, well, you can't do that move. You got to figure out a way to stop it. So eventually, teams will stop it. And if they don't, great. If you can do it, and then 3rd and short is fantastic. Just think about this. They don't have to throw the ball in Philadelphia. They get to 4th and 2. They're going to convert.
Right.
It changes the whole way you scheme you build your team. You don't have to throw the ball that much. And they're not, and they're beating good teams.
We're going to talk a lot more about this and kind of how it relates to Utah because, Trevor, we saw it in the first month of the season for the Utes. They were averaging 4, 5, 6 yards first and second down. They didn't need to throw the ball. Well, they needed to on Saturday and weren't able to convert. The one they were able to convert on, of course, got called back and results in a loss to Texas Tech. We're going to dissect that game a little bit more, look ahead to a trip to West Virginia, and a little NFL chatter as well on the show today. Sammy Mora of Ute Zone joins the program on the other side. This is The Drive. No Spence Checketts today. I am Porter Larson. Trevor Reilly across from me, the former Ute and NFL linebacker, Rattlesnake.
Huh.
We'll have more on that a little bit later as well. On The Drive with Porter and Trevor today on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back. Drive Time on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, your home of the Utes since, I don't know, a little before World War II, 1940 or something, I think.
It's going back, dude.
I'll have to go I'm actually going to double check that. We'll get the exact time for you going way back. As your home of the Utes, now Utah's #1 sports talk. Of course, best place to get Utes coverage over there on the interwebs at Ute Zone. Sammy Mora of utezone.com at S_Mora 247 on socials. You can get all our content there. Sammy, how are you on this Wednesday afternoon?
I was just vibing out to that song. I'm
Good.
a massive Fleetwood Mac fan, so that was perfect. I love that. I don't even remember what I was going to talk about because now I'm just thinking about Fleetwood Mac.
Well, we'll talk a little Utah football, but Fleetwood Mac does have very strong discography. I will say that. They got the hits. We know about the hits. Everyone knows about the hits. You could listen to an album of Fleetwood Mac, and you're going to get a bunch of good stuff.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I have a Fleetwood Mac rumor shirt, and whenever I wear it to practice, Kyle Whittingham stops me, and he's like, "Do you even know who Fleetwood Mac is?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir, I do." And they're by far one of my favorite bands of all time. So, yeah, big Fleetwood Mac fan here.
I will say Kyle is a big classic rock guy, a little bit of like a little hair metal too, right? Some 80s glam rock, if you will. He loves him some of that. While we're on this topic, I have noticed that he lost the aux cord at Rice Cycle Stadium. There used to be a lot more of his type of music. There's a lot of hip hop and whatnot going on. Hey, it's fine. I know we're getting with the times, but I just it's an observation that I think at game days he may have lost the aux privileges.
To be fair, I was wearing a Post Malone shirt last night at practice, and he did before he even started doing his scrum with us. He's like, "I know him. He's a hip hop guy who now does country music. He lost a lot of weight." So it's like we're not giving Kyle as much credit as he should for knowing just music in general, because I fully did not expect him to know who Post Malone was. So that was a nice little a fun little moment from yesterday.
He's with the times. Trevor Reilly, Fleetwood Mac, yes.
They're all right. Kind of hypnotizing music. She's fantastic.
Yeah,
they're okay, but she's the real talent. What's her name? Stevie Nicks.
Yes.
Yes.
She's unbelievable. How are you doing, Sammy?
I'm doing great, Trevor. How are you?
Well, I got to ask you about 18. I'm concerned. I'm calling him out. I need 18 to play better for us. I read your article about him. I know you talked to him. What are we going to do to get some production on that outside receiver spot down the field? What do you think?
I think a lot of it is just going to be, we know that Devin had that lower leg injury last week, and you could see that it was really affecting, his accuracy down the field and stuff. And I think that's a big thing is he had Tobias on quite a few shots. He had the one that he overthrew him that, I still to this day think it would have been a touchdown. If you go back and watch it, there's nobody around Tobias at that time.
Yep.
But, I think also it's play calling to a certain extent. There hasn't been that many deep shots. I know someone asked Kyle this week that there's been 5 or 6 less deep shots down the field this season than there was at this point last year for New Mexico. I think it's play calling. There's just a lot of things that I think. But, getting Tobias going, it's going to happen sooner. I think it needs to happen soon because – you're not going to get very far. We saw last year, you're not going to get very far in the Big 12 with just a run game, and a run game that, at times struggles because Utah turns into a one-trick pony. Teams start loading the box. They start stacking it. No one can get going in the run game. And, it gets predictable very frequently and very rapidly. So I think, getting Tobias going hopefully this weekend would be massive.
Well, yeah, to your point, Sammy, not only is it needed soon, it was needed last week against Texas Tech. Now, this is something we knew. This is something we talked about. You were, there with us at Kyle's press conferences. You understand that this is something that's on Utah's mind, that they have to get something pushed down the field. But again, in order to contend in the Big 12, it's something you're going to have to see sooner than later. Now, part of that is Devin Dampier, the quarterback, right? You got to get a guy that's going to deliver those balls. There were a few opportunities for those. There was one that he hit on that got called back that looked really good, and then there were some misses as well where Devin had guys down the field and just didn't hit on them. I wonder what your thoughts are on, number one, Devin's production looking down the field, his progression, and then on the tail end of that, his availability and the conversation around that this week.
Well, I think, the thing is it's I know I've heard a lot of people saying, like, it's clear that Devin can't see over this offensive line, and that's why you're not seeing a lot of shots downfield. But I think, Devin even last year there were some big guys on that New Mexico offensive line, and Devin was still able to throw through the windows and through the gaps and stuff like that. And I think that personally, I think this all comes back to Kyle and Kyle's stance on, you need to keep the ball safe. You need to not turn it over. And, we saw it last season when Isaac was in. There was lots of chances where he had guys wide open, but he was afraid of turning it over, so he didn't throw it, or he had the wrong read and stuff like that. And so I think at the same time, it all kind of trickles down to that. But you can't win games if you're not taking shots, and like, not to be like that pop culture person, but you, like, in the office when he says like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, like that thing. You really do. You're going to miss it if you don't take it. And so I think Devin needs to become more comfortable with taking those shots. Like, yeah, you might turn it over, but at the same time, this defense has proven that they can pin their ears back and, get a stop when they need it. I mean, up until 10 minutes or 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter last week, they were playing lights out. But I think that it starts with Devin. It starts with play calling, and I think he just needs to not be afraid to take those shots. I'm not saying that Devin is 100% afraid of taking those downfield shots. We've seen him. We saw it do it with Jackson. We've seen him take downfield shots earlier in the season, but it's just it's hard. It's weird to see where this team is at, especially because looking at what New Mexico did last year, there was a lot of deep shots. There was a lot of airing it out and stuff like that. But now it seems like it's a whole different offense here at Utah. But as for Devin's availability, I know Kyle said on Monday that he's in a lot better place than he was last Monday, which I think is a good sign. You could tell from the minute he got out there last Saturday that it was not going to be great. He didn't have that cut and that second level burst that he did the first few weeks of the season, and it was clear, like, when he was running, he was ready to just get down, or he wasn't getting the push that he needed to get those big yardage plays. But I think that ankle and lower leg injuries are always things that sometimes linger, and I hope that this week you get into West Virginia, you get out with a win, and then next week with the bye, very important. I honestly thought that bye week was always going to be a great time, but now I think it's an even better time. Gives you some time to get your feet underneath you, get some extra days of rest, and then, take on Arizona State at home the next week.
I agree with you. I think the bye is well-timed, and for Utah specifically now, a lot has been said. A lot has been chattered about the availability report after Kyle Whittingham's Monday press conference and after learning that Devin wasn't necessarily 100%. Now, I always try to see both sides of it before going on air, and the one side is a coach that, from a coach's perspective, you just don't want to give everything out, right? You don't want to give really anything out, especially if you're an old school coach like Kyle Whittingham. On the other side, if you're in Las Vegas or if you're on the TV side, if you're a broadcaster, if you're one of us, you want to know every little piece of every little detail. Well, those are two conflicting things. And that's part of the job. That's part of the ecosystem and the industry that we kind of have to navigate. Well, we've introduced a little dilemma here by the Big 12's availability report, not injury report. Real good clarification there, an important clarification there. And then the scale that the teams are expected to kind of list their players as. Utah's availability report was very minimal and gave very minimal, and I think you probably should have expected that from them. Sammy, I wonder, covering it, how you approached it and how you've thought of the reaction.
I mean, you said it very clearly right there. This is not an injury report. It's an availability report. And, a couple of the other guys in the media, Steve Bartle, Josh Furlong, both of them tweeted out, like, the policy and stuff. And the availability report is to show what their participation would be in the game. There was never a doubt that Devin wasn't going to play last week versus Texas Tech, which is why he never showed up on the availability report. It's for the game only. And I get I honestly, when I knew that when they announced this was happening, I did not foresee this going any other way than it's going right now.
Yep.
Kyle was going to give out the least amount of information possible, and we were just going to go on with our day. That's what I always thought it was going to be, and it proved to be that way. I get to a certain, and my other thing is Kyle he's it's weird for him because if he puts Devin on the availability report, then everyone's going to be panicked that Devin's on the availability report. But then on the flip side of the coin, we're in the situation that we're in now where Devin wasn't on the availability report, and everyone's like, well, he was playing hurt. Why wouldn't we let him know? Blah, 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 blah. So it's one of those things where it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation for Kyle. And I told our subscribers over on Utah, and I said, this was literally how I foresaw this happening. Like, I didn't think it was going to happen any other way, and it didn't. And, it is what it is to a certain extent. Like, Kyle's going to play by his rules to a certain extent, and that's the thing that's interesting is he was like, oh, we're going to do availability reports, but we're going to take away your depth charts at the same time. It's the gamesmanship thing that just everyone comes back to. And, sometimes it works in Utah's favor and sometimes it blows up in their face very largely.
Well, and gamesmanship is something that I've seen a lot of people use that as speak as if that's negative. If you're a football coach, aren't you trying to do every little thing you can do to get that little edge? I talked about this preseason when we were talking about the Big 12 availability report and what it was going to look like. I brought up last year against UCLA, Sammy, where Utah was coming into the game really shorthanded. I'm talking about, yes, Cam Rising, but also a whole slew of defensive players, a whole bunch of guys up front. They were working with 65, 70% of their roster, if that. And Kyle, I don't know if this was a conscious thought, but kind of knew maybe in foresight that needed every inch of that game, needed to pull out all the stops. Utah got the win 14-7. It was kind of a dogfight. But if you remember pregame, Sammy, there was still at that point talk of Cam Rising playing football. And there was no possibility, no intention of him playing in that game against UCLA. He hadn't been cleared to play or practice at that point. But he dressed up and took snaps and took reps with the first team. And it did cause, I was down there on the sideline, it caused UCLA to, at the very least, look and adjust what they were doing pregame. I wonder if you caught that, if you remember that situation and how you see of it as a competitive advantage, or if that's overstated, or if you think, all this drama is worth even just 1 inch of a competitive advantage.
Well, I'll one up you. I remember that Oregon State game that same season.
Mm-hmm.
When, the TV broadcast was it seemed like they were having an aneurysm at the fact that they weren't told that Cam wasn't playing. It was, and it's I get it to a certain extent, but for me, as my vantage point as a journalist, I prepare for every situation. I didn't think Morton was going to get knocked out, so my prep of their backup quarterback of Hammond was a little bit less. Whereas this week with West Virginia, with them having a possibility of, they don't know who's going to start, I'm going to do prep work on all three of those quarterbacks so I know what to expect heading into the game. It's I think part of it is it's football is a sport that it's a physical sport, but it's also a mental sport. It's like playing a game of chess. There are times where what you are doing, you need to, you need to think about what your next move is going to be at the same time. And psychologically, obviously Utah got to UCLA in that game because Cam. I remember Cam was going through warmups. Everyone was thinking Cam was going to play, and then all of a sudden he comes back out in street clothes, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay, I guess he's not playing." So it might have caused UCLA to kind of hesitate and possibly change a few things in the last minute game prep. But at the same time, that game was that game. Utah came away with the win, and UCLA is now who they are now, and Utah that season ended up who they were. And so it's just, I get it to a certain extent, but at the same time, it's like, if I was a coach, I would try and do everything possible to win games. I mean, but there does get to a point where, a line has to be drawn. Like, having Cam do that, like, I think it was like 4 or 5 weeks in a row where he like warmed up and then like was not available for the game. Like, that's to a certain extent maybe a little bit too much, but at the same time, like, Kyle's going to do what Kyle's going to do. And, we're all here for the ride at this point.
What I would say about Coach is that he prepares as if everybody's playing who's on the injury report. So when he looks at other teams, he's like, why don't you do the same? He's like, I'm preparing as if everybody else is playing. I have everything ready to go if this guy plays or this guy plays. And so I think he looks at it like, well, there's no honor among thieves here. Everybody's lined everybody, or everybody's got everybody ready to go. So, I mean, that's the only answer I could give on that one, because to both your points, it seems a little bit cowboyish. But I really believe that he thinks it's like, well, I'm preparing for everybody. So why aren't you?
And then on top of all of it is the Big 12 asking you to now go and say, okay, 25% is not likely, or 50% is questionable, 75% is probable. So now you're asking a Division I college football coach whose job is to, yes, he's got media obligations, all the above, whose job, though, is to put a football product on the field and recruit, all the above. But now you're asking him to do math on his entire roster every Thursday, every Friday, Saturday morning, before game day. It's something that, I get it. It's professional sports now. People are betting on this. People are putting millions and billions of dollars into this product. But to me, there's got to be a time when we, at some point, put the sport before Las Vegas and before TV money and TV revenue money and commercial money. And I don't know when that is, but we haven't seen it yet. That's part of this conversation, I think.
Well, Sammy, quick question for you on this. Do you see any issues with the training room just handling this? What are solutions here? Because if you leave it to the coaches, there's no honor among thieves. Who's going to handle this, Sammy? What do you think?
I mean, well, Kyle said that he doesn't, that the trainer is the one that puts together their availability report.
Right.
He literally said, like, I'm not a doctor. I don't know those types of things. So, I mean, I honestly, like, with this whole thing, it's like, if I personally would feel safer with the trainers doing it, just because, like, obviously Kyle wants everyone to play every single week. That's he recruits these guys to come through this program to play football. And if they can't play, then it's like, it is what it is. Like, sometimes it's disappointing because you have to shift and flex and do all these different things to kind of make up for their absence. But at the same time, I would rather a trainer put it together, because then it's like, hey, well, this is backed based on, the people that these players are going to when they need medical help.
With you on that. And then again, the only conflict there is that these are two conflicting things, where a trainer, if you leave it to the trainers, he's in or out. And that's what we saw in the availability report. We saw the guys that were out. We didn't see anything else. Trainers don't operate on Las Vegas's probable, questionable, maybe. They pass a guy, they clear him, or they don't. And that's what we saw on Utah's availability report. And to be completely frank, even though it may not be to the enjoyment of some, that's all in the wording of the report and how the Big 12 organized it. Now, do they change it because Kyle is, pulling every stop out? I don't know. We'll see how they respond to that.
And that's the point about the trainers, is they don't see it as, like, oh, well, maybe they could play. It's very much a,
Right.
No, they're going to play, or a no, they can't play type of thing. It's very black and white when you get the trainers involved. And honestly, I think I would prefer that, because then you get if they're listed as questionable, you get the hope of, oh, well, if they're questionable, that means they have a better chance to play than if they're doubtful. But then all of a sudden, then they don't play, and they're like, they were listed as probable, and then everyone starts panicking, and it's like, why were they listed as probable if they weren't going to play? Whereas with the trainers, if it's very black and white, it's a yes or a no thing, and that's how Kyle runs things. It's very a yes or no program. So I think that, from my vantage point, like, I think the trainers handling it is good, because then you don't get those things where it's like, well, maybe he'll play, but maybe he won't type of thing.
I think more about this, because I got to tell you, I haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about this, but now that we're talking about it, if I was a gambling fan of the Utah Utes, I would want to know if the starting quarterback is banged up a little bit.
Of course.
I'm putting a couple thousand down on the Utes to win, and I'm thinking the quarterback's in perfect, good condition. I can see that being an issue, from my own thing. I don't gamble, so it's not, but I could feel that. And then on the other side, if you're betting against the Utes, if you'd want to. So I think there's a lot there to unpack, but when you're paying Coach, what, 9? Is he making 9 or 10 million?
I'll have to go back and check.
You know what it is.
I think it's 7 something, but
I think honestly, I haven't looked at. I looked at the contract before the season started, but I cannot remember it off the top of my head right now.
It's a lot of money, and so if they have to hire somebody to handle this stuff, I guess. But I just, it's interesting that these games are still being played, because I'm with Coach on this. I'm preparing as if everyone's playing. I think everybody's lying. So it's a hard thing.
Right. Yeah. And, there's always going to be conflicting interests, especially when you do bring in, like you're saying, the entertainment, the gambling side of sports. And, yeah, I just think it's a game that Coach isn't interested in playing. He's not necessarily doing it in bad faith. It's not like part of his ecosphere. It's not part of his even thought process, right? So it's interesting to see how it'll play out. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of the Big 12 reacts to it. All right, Sammy, now that that's all out of the way, any insight on what that availability report may look like going into a matchup with West Virginia, or the expected answer, wait until we hear from Kyle, and it's going to be pretty minimal on Thursday?
Well, obviously, the only addition that I know of currently will be Hunter Andrews will be listed as out. Kyle announced yesterday that he has a season-ending injury, so obviously Hunter will be on the first availability report. I'm going to be very conscious that I say injury report. I don't say injury report anymore because it is clearly an availability report for Utah. But Hunter's out, but we'll find out when the first one comes out at 8 p.m. tonight, 8 p.m. Mountain Time tonight. But I think. Yeah, it's so hard because it's like now with the whole when Carson Kafusi popped up on it last week, everyone was like, well, this had to have happened at practice, right? Like Kyle wouldn't have been lying about it. I'm like, yeah, it happened during practice. Like that's not Kyle. I don't think Kyle would actively lie on this in terms of someone who they just put somebody on there to like throw the tracks off or confuse anybody. But I honestly have no idea who's going to be on it. Hunter's the only new addition that I know of off the top of my head. But, when I see that first report, it'll be like everyone else. I'll be like, oh, okay, so nothing has changed.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see how that all plays out. Thoughts on West Virginia? I think a team that's pretty susceptible at the moment, and as you mentioned, Sammy, they've got some question marks at quarterback is one of them. But this is a really good environment, one on the road that Utah has not seen before. Their only other matchups with West Virginia have been bowl wins. What are your thoughts on this matchup and the challenge it poses for the 3-1 Utes?
Well, if we want to talk about injuries, you need to talk about West Virginia. I think I've heard the number I've heard is between 7 to 12 players might be out for them, depending on if you're counting the ones that were out in previous games and stuff. Obviously, like I alluded to earlier, they have a quarterback situation going on. They don't know who truly will be starting on Saturday for them, but they have, I think Rich Rodriguez says that their right guard and their right tackle might possibly be out this weekend. Their center might be out this weekend. So, if we're talking about teams that are banged up and bruised up and, lots of questions surrounding it, it's going to be West Virginia. And I think that this is a big opportunity for Utah to, right the ship and get back on the right track. I know there was a lot of sweeping generalizations last week about how, this team is not good because they couldn't beat Texas Tech. They're not a great team, all these things and stuff. And I think, one game does not define a team. I think we've seen that long before. We've seen that so many years, whether it's at Utah or whether it's at any other school across the country. One loss does not define teams. And, if anything, I think this validated that Texas Tech, all that spending actually was good. Like, they have a good team. That defense is legit, And so I think that it's going to be interesting to see how Utah responds. They're flying out tomorrow, going out to West Virginia a day early, get guys acclimated to the time difference and stuff like that. But I think, honestly, Utah should be able to go in there and, rebound, get everything back on track, and head into that next weekend on the bye weekend with a win.
Yeah, I think schematically it's a good matchup for Utah, especially when you mentioned, Sammy, the short-handed Mountaineers, they are going to be without a few guys up front, and it's a question mark about who's going to be leading the charge in the backfield for them. So we'll see, but that's something Morgan Scalley, I'm sure, is licking his chops at. The injury report, as Sammy mentioned, that you really should be looking for. Sorry, the availability report that you should be looking for is probably the Mountaineers. I will say this, Sammy, since I'm kind of on Team Kyle as far as all this goes, I hope he lists every player on the roster as probable, and then just the season enders is out. I hope he just does that. Just because, hey, we don't know.
That would be so petty. That would be so petty, but I would so be here for that. Because honestly, I thought before the season even started, I was like, this is either going to go one way. He's either just going to list the people who are out with season-ending injuries, or he's going to list every single player on this roster as probable / whatever. I honestly thought that's how it was going to go. I literally was like, I don't see Kyle playing this game any other way. But it wouldn't shock me if he was like, okay, well, we're going to be a little bit petty this week and put literally every person on the team on this availability report.
Yeah, I'd kind of enjoy that, even though I know it would just drive the Big 12 fans around the region absolutely crazy. Sammy, utezone.com, and of course, Ute Zone. You guys got all sorts of digital stuff going up on the website, the chats and whatnot. Let the folks know what to look for both during the week and, of course, on game day.
So utezone.com, we call it the greatest internet or greatest community on the internet for Utah fans. We're running 30% off promos currently, so come join the site. Annual membership. Message boards are popping off. They're having a good time. We have our own VIP podcast called In the Zone with me and our publisher, Dan Sorensen, where we, go a deep dive into these things, talk about recruiting, all that sort of jazz. Follow me on Twitter at S_Mora247. Our Ute Zone account is at Ute Zone. And then, next week with the bye week, we have a bunch of basketball content that's going to start rolling out. I know it is football season, but running Utes, they're coming up. Utah women's basketball season's coming up as well, so we will start rolling out some basketball content next week as well. But, game days, live game threads, all sorts of stuff, so come on over and join us at Ute Zone.
Also, Stevie Nicks, former Wasatch Middle School attendee.
Wow.
As well as, I think, Judge and some Highland.
Went to Judge.
Some Highland.
He went to Judge. Yeah, I went to Juan Diego, so it's like a nice little rivalry type thing we got going on between me and Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, one of our texters wanted to make sure we knew she had some time here. John Raymer, apparently a local, dated her for a minute. Shout out John Raymer. Sammy, appreciate your time as always. We'll let you go and look forward to your coverage on game day.
Thanks, guys.
Back the other side, we're going to talk some more football, maybe expand out a little bit beyond Utah, talk some Big 12, talk some college football at large. Chris Kamrani of The Athletic, one of my favorite guests on the program, will stop by on the other side. This segment brought to you by IFA Country Stores. With IFA's Step 4 fall and winter lawn food, you'll get roots now and an early green up next spring. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move. More at your local IFA or at ifa.coop. IFA Country Stores, helping to grow the things you love. Chris Kamrani of The Athletic stops by the program on the other side. Porter Larson, Trevor, Reilly hanging out with you on this afternoon edition of The Drive on Utah's #1 sports talk. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We're back on the drive. No Spence Checketts today. I'll be back with you next week. I am Porter Larson, the usual producer of this here program. A pleasure to be joined in studio today by one Trevor Reilly, the former Ute, NFL linebacker, edge. What?
Well,
just football player.
Utah, I played front seven. Okay, I even played
some nickel. You played some outside backer. You played some D end.
I was a special teamer in the pros.
I saw your hand in the dirt sometimes.
There you go. I could do a little bit.
What do you think of that, by the way? All these players playing multiple different spots on Utah's.
I love it. I should have played both ways.
Is there just a quick question before we get into our guest here? Is there a little bit too much on the necessity side for Utah right now?
Well, I got to tell you, 23 is our best receiver.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Let's not get that twisted, okay? He's unbelievable, dude. That catch he had over the top. So not a bad move, right? He might need to get some more reps in there, especially, down the field stuff. But I want to see two play a little bit better, okay? I was not happy with his game on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
We need more out of him, okay? He needs to. I call him havoc plays, okay? Forced fumbles, interceptions, sacks, TFLs. And for him, touchdowns. We need to get all that stuff going with those guys. 8 needs to play better. 2 needs to play better. And then 1 can't fumble anymore.
Yeah.
If you're listening, number 1, okay, high and tight, and you're not fumbling anymore. Okay, we're going to manifest that. It's not happening. You're too talented. You're not fumbling anymore.
Can promise that has been a heavy focus at Kyle Whittingham's practices this week and last. All right, our next guest. You guys have... I wouldn't say you vacationed together. Chris came out and visited you for a story once upon a time. Chris Kamrani of The Athletic. CK, how's it going, my friend?
It's going well, yeah. It was about this time last year that I flew across the ocean to meet somebody that I'd never met or talked to in my life. And now he's back here, and I'm here, and the tables have turned, so Trevor gets to put me under the microscope. I'm sure he's stoked about that.
I got to tell you, Chris, this is everybody listen, this is a stand-up guy right here. I spent 2 days with him. No fear. Didn't bring shoes. Okay, wore sandals.
If you meet with Trevor Reilly, you're not supposed to bring shoes, just to be clear.
That's why I knew I liked him. I said, you don't want to need shoes. All right, we're gonna boogie then. I like that. But yeah, Chris, it's been a year, been a crazy year. I've been following your stuff, by the way. You're doing a great job. I got to ask you a question about this game on Saturday. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, do you see this as maybe the book is out on how to stop Utah's offense, or do you think this is just a bump in the road?
Can I say both?
Yes.
I'll start with.
You just have to expand if you say both.
The book is out in that if you aren't able to adjust and aren't able to play to your strengths, and obviously the strength of this team is the offensive line. I felt like after a quarter and a half, when a lot of the misdirection, a lot of the east to west type plays weren't working, listen, man, anybody who knows Kyle Whittingham knows that he likes to go north to south. It's worked in all of the years they've been good or had decent teams. They've lined up, they've run the ball straight down the gaps. They did not do that. And I wonder if that's I mean, I know it's a learning lesson for Jason Beck in this offense, but again, just hearing you guys talk about in my opinion, the most indispensable player on the team right now, Utah, for where it's at as a program, for the expectations that some put upon this program going into 2025, the best, most indispensable player should not be a former walk-on from Olympus High School.
Mm-hmm.
That's not taking anything away from Jackson Benny, because he's been a revelation. I think what Utah has been able to do, and Trevor, you know this better than anybody, they're able to find guys that either people passed over or nobody's heard of and put them in positions to shine. But Utah is no longer the team that can afford to be, we're the plucky, underdog guys that are going to catch you off guard. Utah came into the season with a lot of local and national pundits saying like this team has what it takes to contend for a Big 12 title, and Saturday's offensive performance showed, regardless of Devin Dampier's health, that to me it felt like, and I know people don't want to hear this, but I said this on Spence's show last week, anytime the bells and whistles come rolling into Salt Lake City, when you have a premier day game at Rice Eccles Stadium with a high-profile opponent, and everybody's rolling in, it just doesn't seem to work out. Trevor was part of that 47-7 game in 2010 against TCU. I'm thinking of the Oregon game from a few years ago. Now, granted, Oregon had a Heisman Trophy finalist and was probably one of the best teams in the country, and Utah didn't have Cam. And then Saturday, it just seems like anytime Utah, for one reason or another, is kind of the focal point for college football on a national scope during the day, during a certain time slot, it does not go well. So a very long-winded answer to Trevor's question that, A, the book is out on Utah's offense because they weren't able to adjust on the fly or in real time. And B, you have to give them a mulligan. This is one bad game, but this is the best team they played so far this season, and it might be the best team they play all season. So I don't think we're going to learn all that much about Utah going into West Virginia, but we have a long 30-minute hit. So, Porter, you're up.
Well, and part of what you just alluded to, Chris, is that because we only have, 4 games of Texas Tech sample size, we still are trying to learn some things about Utah. What I think we absolutely do know is that, as you mentioned, they need more outside. Their most impact player on the outside cannot be a Jackson Benny. It frankly can't be a Smith Snowden. They need a player that's playing offense to stand out on that side of the ball, a guy that can take every snap and be a threat, so that you don't have teams that are stacking the box. Now, Texas Tech didn't do that, but there will be teams this year that challenge Utah in that way. Can I ask your opinion right now of Texas Tech and their kind of concept of what is a billionaire in Cody Campbell, who played offensive line there for Mike Leach and now struck liquid gold in the form of oil down there in West Texas? Well, he went in and not only did he kind of buy a roster for the Red Raiders and Coach McGuire, but it wasn't the top quarterbacks out of the portal. It wasn't the top wide receivers. Yes, they had one of the top running backs come in. But, Chris, the majority of the guys that they kind of talked into coming to Lubbock and playing there, they're big fellas on the inside. They're linebackers. They're defensive linemen. And it showed. It showed Saturday. I wonder if you think that this is something that's sustainable. And if we do know maybe a little bit more about Texas Tech, even though it's so early.
Well, Cody said as much in interviews over the last 6 months. Texas Tech was known for being teams that could beat you 55-48.
Right.
And they would come up against teams that had more dominant offensive linemen and defensive linemen. And in those games, they would fold because they couldn't keep up. If you were talking about the type of team that Texas Tech needed to invest into players for, it's Utah, because historically Utah is the type of team that is able to hang with teams that might have more talent on the outside or might have more of a game changer quarterback because of their ability to quote unquote dominate in the trenches. But Texas Tech took it to Utah. I don't know if it was one of those things where Utah was, reading its own press clippings and hearing that they're the best offensive line in the history of Utah football or this or that, but I can't remember the last time that Utah failed to run the football as effectively as they failed to do against Texas Tech. And conversely, I can't remember the last time running backs were entering the A gaps and B gaps and just pinballing off of people. Like historically, Morgan Scalley, Kyle Whittingham, Kalani Sitake coach defense designed, you're taught to wrap and bring down, but guys were not wrapping. They were not bringing down. It looked like I was watching like a football movie, like The Replacements with Keanu Reeves, when like you would just be like, oh, this is how they play football. Guys just run into each other and one falls backwards. That's how it kind of was. Like, I think Kyle said they had 21 missed tackles
23.
And 23. So listen, this is not all on the offense. I know the defense kept them in the game on Saturday, but this team still has a ways to go. And this is what I was saying, as you know, Porter, throughout the most of spring, summer, and now fall, is that while a lot of people were stoked about Devin Dampier and his ability, they watched his highlight reels at New Mexico. I guarantee you not a lot of people locally and nationally watch the highlight reels of games in which Devin struggled in last year, because there were games in which he struggled in last year. So this is a byproduct of one, local media being stoked at the idea that Utah can turn it around with a bunch of new faces and a new style of offense after a down year. And coincidentally, you talk about the national media who are giving Kyle the benefit of the doubt. They know Kyle Whittingham coach teams play good defense. They have good defensive players. And they said, wow, they went out into the portal and got this really good quarterback who's dynamic. And did you see this YouTube highlight? Did you see this Twitter clip last year? Yes. But like what we have to be responsible about for all of us in this industry is not just going off of what you see in a Twitter clip or what you go off what you see on YouTube. You have to give the totality of, historic performance of individual and collective players. And I'm not saying that Utah's out of the Big 12 race. There's still plenty of time to go. But I was always kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, because people were saying, oh, Utah's your Big 12 contender. And I said, okay, Devin Dampier's a great play, has great upside, let's say, at the P4 level. But who's he throwing to? He's throwing to a kid from Olympus who's turned out to be, the breakout star of the year. But I'm talking to a guy. I'm not trying to date our guy, the co-host of The Drive today. But the last time, I'm going to remind people, the last time Utah had a 1,000-yard receiver was when our guy sitting in the hot seat today was in uniform at Utah, 2013, Drez Anderson. Yep. That is an absurd stat, and I'm going to drop that every single time we talk about the struggles and the inability to recruit playmakers on the outside, because you're talking about 13 seasons, guys. And Texas Tech, I know we're talking about Texas Tech. Texas Tech has 3,000 or 4,000-yard receivers every year. So, there's a lot of minutia in there, but I'm just saying, like, everyone needs to pump the brakes, and Utah needs to go out and prove that they're the team that a lot of people believe them to be before the season started.
I would say I agree with everything you said. And I think that one other thing to look at, Texas Tech, I'm looking at their rest of their season here. They got Arizona State, they got BYU. I mean, BYU's ranked 25th. That's the only ranked team left. They might run the table. That quarterback was really good for them. Remember, we had 6 turnovers. No one talks about the 2 4th downs. We had 6 turnovers. And so those are two things that, as the offensive coordinator goes back and watches it, those turnovers kill you. You can't. It's hard. Fumbles are killer. But this Texas Tech team, that quarterback, I want to get your take on him. I thought the backup was better than the starter. I mean, it was obvious but even the way he played, it just seemed like he's the real deal.
Well, he's the real deal. He has Utah ties. His dad grew up on the Wasatch Front. Apparently, he grew up coming here for vacations, and he was a highly sought after recruit. I mean, everybody in the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC were high on this kid. And part of it is if you're going to have an incumbent in front of you like Baron Morton, it's going to be hard to dethrone somebody who has been the starter at a school like Texas Tech. But I would venture a guess that if Baron Morton gets healthy and struggles, it will not be hard for Joey McGuire to go to the bullpen and say, let's put 15 out there to see what he can do, because he had some throws that, like, watching on the highlight, like I'm not saying he wore the number 15 at Texas Tech too. I'm not saying he was this, but there were some throws that looked Mahomes-esque in slow-mo on the Fox broadcast from this kid, looking off safeties in a tight window, flicking it around, where I'm with you, Trevor. I immediately thought, why isn't this guy the starter? So that's a good problem to have if you're Texas Tech. And as you mentioned, conceivably, if they can stay healthy, if their defensive front, which was tremendously impressive against Utah's offensive line, if those guys can stay healthy, they have a shot. But again, the Big 12 reminds me of the Pac-12, and you're gonna come up against a Texas Tech if they have somebody random on their schedule. If it's like you mentioned, having to go to Tempe, or who they got Kansas come into town. You got to go to Houston, who's had a decent start to the year. You got to go to Kansas State. These are all trap games that exist in the Big 12, whereas they don't necessarily exist in other conferences.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Texas Tech, they have an opportunity to kind of run the table and get into the Big 12 title game potentially. That defensive front, man, I'm telling you right now, come back to this if you want to. 2, maybe 3, and maybe all 4 of those guys up front are going to be playing on Sundays. They're that good, and they showed it on Sunday. That's what the NIL extra $25 or so million does for you on
there's
the Lubbock
rumor,
side.
There's a rumor, that they got those 2 ends for this game. Specifically, they were willing to overpay for this specific game against our 2 tackles.
Well, you got to get over that hump, right? And you got to look at who's on your schedule. You got to look at who you're playing. CK, maybe unfair after only one week of the Big 12 season here in Salt Lake, but any recalibrated expectations of the conference where the Utes fit in and maybe where the Cougs fit in?
Watching BYU this year, I said this last week, like it looks like 2014 to 2017 Utah, like really good defense, offense that will get you through it, willing to run the ball. It's a lot of pressure on a young freshman quarterback, and while he hasn't blown the doors off any team yet, like I'm guarantee you he will come up against the struggles. I do think, listen, BYU has a tough schedule too. They got to go to Boulder on Saturday. Now, I think BYU is better in the trenches than the Buffaloes are, but I think a lot of people would have thought the same thing about Utah and Texas Tech. You still got to go to Arizona, which is improved. You got Utah at home, Iowa State, Texas Tech in back-to-back weeks, and then TCU at home is a 3-game stretch for BYU that will be brutal later on in the season. So they've been impressive. I give Aaron Roderick a lot of credit for being able to change the style of offense and tailor it to what is necessary. Obviously, that's LJ Martin. You have Chase Roberts and other talented guys on the outside, but they're not necessarily slinging it around willy-nilly the way they would if they had a veteran quarterback. And for Utah, like I said, I don't know how much we're going to learn about them, especially because I think West Virginia is down like its starting quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end. Like on paper, like Utah should be able to go in there and handle its business, but you never know. This will be Utah's first trip to West Virginia. And historically, Kyle Whittingham teams have fared well against Rich Rodriguez coach teams, even though Rich Rod has been a prolific offensive mind. So if you can get your first Big 12 win in the bag this week, you go into a bye week, then you got ASU and BYU back-to-back weeks. Don't know what the health situation is regarding Devin Dampier, but Kyle said in his Monday presser that he's better on this week than he was at this point last week. For me, I'm looking at, can Jason Beck become more can he simplify his offense to the point where he is taking advantage of the skill set that he has around him? Meaning, if you have Wayshawn Parker and Nakari Rogers, like that's a pretty decent 1-2 tandem. I don't necessarily think you need to be looking to throw bubble screens on 2nd and 8 or bubble screens on 3rd and 6. It's like, can you line up and run behind this offensive line that a lot of people think is really good? And it's not just the tackles. Like you're talking about 3 returning lettermen. Porter, you were talking about all 4 of those guys for Texas Tech are going to be playing on Sundays. Like you can make an argument that the 3 middle guys at Utah will have a chance to do the same thing playing alongside Spencer and Caleb. So can the offensive line like recover from a flop of a collective performance on Saturday at a place they've never played before? If you're Utah and you want to be able to contend for a Big 12 title, that's the first box you need to check off the list.
Well, switching gears just a touch, I wanted to get your take on BYU Colorado this weekend. I kind of want a prediction from you. But what do you think? What do you think, man?
What do you think? You're the guy who knows these programs better than anybody.
I'm kind of excited, dude. I was telling Porter, I kind of want to get out of town on Friday a little early, go see the Fireside with Kalani and those boys, and then go to the game. I think, based on I've watched both teams, I really think it's going to be a 1-score game, and then I don't know. I think Colorado's going to pull through on it. I'm not rooting for him, but I sense a little bit of some momentum building there, and they got a home game. So I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, going to Boulder and playing a night game, the atmosphere will be awesome. I don't know what the status is of Colorado's running back situation. I think they're pretty beat up. I watched Deion's presser on Tuesday, and they mentioned that they lost a couple guys to injury. So if you're going to put the entirety of the game on the shoulders of Caden Salter, that's Caden Salter, who's coming off a good game against a Wyoming team that might be okay in the Mountain West Conference, going up against a Jay Hill coach defense with Kalani Sitake overseeing it. We saw what that looks like last year in the bowl game. Now, two totally different teams, but BYU gave fits to Shedeur Sanders and that Colorado offensive line last year. Different teams, I get it, but if Colorado can't run the ball, they will be pretty easy to scout in that. Like Caden Salter will look to run when he can, which he was effective against Wyoming, and then he's going to look to throw to some talented wideouts that they have. But to me, it's, maybe this is kind of chalk, but whoever wins the turnover battle will likely win the game. Bear Bachmeier hasn't turned the ball over once all year, a true freshman kid who is coming off a win over an East Carolina team that probably won't be all that good in the grand scheme of things, but still a road win. So, good for him to get that under his belt. But Colorado will be a little different. I'm with you, Trevor, probably a one-score game. I think I'm going to roll with Trevor on this one. I think the Buffs eke it out.
And I'm not hating on BYU. I like them, but you mentioned Utah and struggling with those afternoon games. This seems like a game fit. It's a trap game for BYU, is what I'm saying. I hope
you think so? Okay.
Well, I think Colorado, Deion can get these guys up for these games. He likes practicing at night. I heard he's practicing a couple times a night.
Yep. He said they practiced a couple times at night last week to get ready for the Wyoming game, which was a night kick as well. I don't know if BYU has seen the athletes on the outside that Colorado has. Draylon Miller's been a guy that they're really high on, as you know, Trevor, that he's kind of been underutilized. But DeKalen Taylor's been
tailback, dude.
Yeah. I mean, they probably should, because he's the guy that Deion compared to Deebo Samuel, and if they're down that many players, probably the right fit. But Sincere Brown is a very good transfer wide receiver who has been a target for all of their quarterbacks who have played already this year. But again, like this BYU team seems like it's built in the mold of kind of like those old school Utah teams where like they don't necessarily expand beyond the means of what is necessary to be able to stay in games, but you're doing it with a freshman quarterback, and eventually the growing pains will come. Now they could rear their head, Saturday night at Folsom Field, but I mean, to talk about a team being 3-0, 4-0, whatever BYU is, and not have a single turnover for a freshman quarterback is pretty impressive.
CK, Jackson Dart was named the starter at the New York Giants, of course, the former Corner Canyon. Roy High School for a moment as well. Just one of the latest in a long line recently of locals to the NFL. I shared a graph earlier this week. It's an annual graph done by Dr. Ted Gouge. He's a sports geographer at Northwest University, and it gives you the NFL player origins, meaning the high school that they went to. And outside of SEC country, Utah produces the most NFL players per capita, more than Texas, more than the Carolinas, more than Virginia. It's really, really impressive, and it's a number that has continued. They are kind of in this zone pretty much every year. I update this every year and keep an eye on it every year. And this is not a outlier. This is nothing new as far as the last decade goes. I want to get your thoughts on, number one, Jackson as the starter and that culture of Utah football that's creating this many pros.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave Roy High School a shout out, because that's where he started before the inevitability of ending up at Corner Canyon like so many other star high school quarterbacks in Utah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I was able to write a story on Jackson during his last year at Ole Miss and talk to him and his family, and really interesting kid, like definitely has the outward kind of swagger, which is different. I think a lot of folks ask their quarterbacks to be more calm and present this kind of even keeled approach. Watching the Jackson Dart Gruden video, they went into detail of him being pretty pissed off on the sideline, where you don't necessarily usually see a quarterback be mad about something. There usually has to be more even keel. So he's unfortunately being thrust into a situation just like the previous Corner Canyon quarterback who was highly drafted and became the starter. Is he's going to the lion's den, gentlemen, and Trevor knows this very well. It is an impossible task to satiate a New York sports fan. Unfortunately for Zach Wilson, he went to the Jets. I fear that a similar fate might happen for Jackson, because it is just a untenable situation right now to bench a future Hall of Famer like 2 weeks after he threw for like almost 500 yards on Porter's Cowboys, even though the Cowboys won. It just seems like this. Brian Dable's basically putting his job on the line for this. So I hope the best for Jackson. He's going to do his Anakin Skywalker thing. It's going to be fun to watch. And then to talk about, the churn of high school talent in Utah that goes to the pros. What's really fascinating to me is you're seeing it not just like along the Wasatch Front, you're seeing it all over. Like, people forget that the Sewell family, like they are the St. George, Panay and Nephi and those guys were St. George kids. And a lot of people move here. I mean, it's part of our boom. Like the Nakua family, they were Vegas kids before they moved to Utah. And like it is part of the population boom that Utah has been able to, undertake in the last 10 years. And I think you're only going to see it continue. You saw a lot of kids move out here during the COVID years to try to get, some high school football reps under their belt. And anytime Corner Canyon and Lone Peak is now appointment television for all the recruiting dorks across the country. So anytime you can get those dorks turning in, I think more often than not, people are going to say, oh, there's this kid, this 3 or 4 star tight end at Corner Canyon. And more often than not, people are going to know what Corner Canyon is now. Whereas, 10 years ago, it was kind of Lone Peak. The Chase Hansen was kind of the premier name and school back then, but now Utah has several.
And just to make it more impressive, that stat that I mentioned, the per capita stat, that doesn't include the players that you just talked about that are coming here to play football. That doesn't include the Trevor Reillys. That doesn't include the Jalen Johnsons. That doesn't include the other guys. That is high school to NFL players. And then if you go just college to NFL, guess what? Utah State, BYU, all produce above average in that regard. So just a really rich football culture here right now that's pretty fun to talk about. I
think the Bears starting left tackle went to SUU, if I'm not mistaken. So shout out Cedar City.
Yeah, there's pros starting from Weber State. There's guys from SUU. There's guys that played at Snow. Shout out Jalen Warren, who went to Snow and then went to Logan and then went to Oklahoma State. And then, of course, he's a East High kid. So, yeah, the local football is strong here. He's the first Steelers running back to get an extension on his initial contract in 30 years. Wow. And he was playing at Snow College a few years ago. Pretty cool.
I got to tell you, I think to why that is. Right, you guys brought that up, and I keep thinking, how is that possible? Obviously, the Polynesian, pipeline.
That's huge.
But do you think about what Lavelle Edwards, Ron McBride, okay, Urban a little bit, but now Kalani and Coach Witt, they are training these kids, meaning that their GAs and that their programs they're in the high school blood here. Okay, there's a lot of those guys that are coaching high school ball that are coming from those trees, so their systems are nice. I wanted to ask you a question. Going forward, what are you looking forward to covering this year in the Big 12 specifically? Is there any storylines you're looking to see how they unfold? Is there anything that's piquing your interest?
If I'm going to Audible, because so many of my colleagues are so high on the Texas Tech thing right now, just looking at the standings, I was in Dublin for the Iowa State-Kansas State game, and Iowa State was very impressive, and Rocco Becht is a gamer. Matt Campbell is the type of coach that kind of reminds me of like a young Witt type. So don't know how long Iowa State will be able to keep him there, because I know he's been a name thrown about in the coaching carousel often the last few years. I think Iowa State's the best team in the Big 12. But again, what am I looking for, Trevor? I'm looking for how these teams that are in the driver's seat can avoid stepping on landmines, because that is just the way it goes in this conference. Like I said, it reminds me tremendously of the Pac-12, and I will not be surprised if, number 14 Iowa State ends up taking an L if they have to go to Stillwater, playing for a team that just had to fire its legendary head coach. This is the way this conference goes. And in a sense, that conference gets in its own way, because one thing the Big Ten and the SEC does not do is it does not get in its own way. It does not really, you don't really see the Georgias losing to the Vanderbilts all that often. Now Vanderbilt's a good team this year. Maybe that's a bad example, but yeah, I'll say this. Can we get through Halloween, and will we see a Big 12 team still be undefeated? Yes or no from you guys?
I kind of think no.
I say no. I'd say no too.
If it is, it's because Texas Tech looks like the team we saw Saturday consistently. I don't know that that's what we will see, but if so, that's the team that I think would be the prime candidate for that.
Chris, my thing is I'm thinking about why again, and the only thing I can think of is the scheduling and the times of the games, the travel. It's just, you think about Big Ten and SEC. The Big Ten has a little travel issue, right? But they mostly play their games at 1:00 or whatever the time is right there on the East Coast. So we have these wacky start times from 10 a.m. in Salt Lake to, I'm sure, a few weeks down the road we're going to play at 8:15, like we do every year once or twice. I mean, just the whole thing, conference, it does remind me of just a cannibalized thing. It just kind of eats itself. And I kind of am with you on that. I want to see two teams make the playoff this year. I think we're guaranteed one, right?
I think, yeah, they'll get one in. Two is a big question, and I think one thing that's hurting this conference this year is star talent too. Like if you're talking about who is the most tantalizing prospect in the Big 12 this year? Like, is it really Rocco Becht, like a guy that is a gamer and is the type of quarterback that any team would want? But I don't think he's the type of guy that people are saying, I need to leave the grocery store. I need to get home to watch Rocco Becht. I need to get home to watch Baron Morton. I think that's a little bit of an issue. Now ASU losing at Mississippi State, a game they shouldn't have lost, is a big thorn in the side of the conference. And maybe we're writing off ASU a little too early, because we saw last year that when they're healthy and they can get going, Sam Leavitt is a hell of a player, and Kenny Dillingham has a roster that can hang with anybody in the Big 12. But I think that's another issue facing the Big 12 is its lack of star talent. Last couple of years, they haven't had that problem, because a couple of guys that Trevor knows really well were bringing in all the eyeballs, with Travis winning the Heisman Trophy and people wanting to tune in to watch Colorado and Shedeur and Dion. I guess I should correct myself in saying they do have star talent, but your star talent maybe necessarily shouldn't be the coach of one team. It should be more player driven at this point.
Well, and one guy you forgot, and I got to tell you, since his performance on Monday, Scata Bo. All right, I'm taking the under on Arizona State this year. He's not there. Yeah. He carried the Giants to at least a decent showing. And that team in Arizona State, man, they've always been prime with that location. I think Colorado, obviously with Denver, and then you got the two Utah schools. But we have an advantage over these other small town schools, I call them, right? Lubbock's not a great town. It's not a bad town. It's not a great town. We need more money. And as this thing shakes out, right, I said Texas Tech wouldn't be undefeated before Halloween or after Halloween. Well, I got to tell you, if they are, there's a good chance they're going to run the table. And so they're in. We're let's say they're in, right? Our goal now is, I'm looking forward to you. So I want to ask you this question: what does our record have to be to either win this conference or be that second team in? You think
for Utah?
For Utah, what do we got to be at the end of the season?
Ooh, I think, yikes. Looking at the schedule,
be enough? Can we get in with 2 losses?
You would have to get into the Big 12 title game with 2 losses and win the Big 12 title game. I think. I don't think you could be an outlier of. I don't think you could not be in the Big 12 title game, win or lose, and not be in the playoff. I think getting to the title game is a must. And if you can win it with 2 losses. I mean, if you can get there with 3 losses and win it, great. I don't know if you'll be able to sneak in but I guess you would be able to get in because you would be the Big 12 champion.
Right.
It's all confusing to me because they're moving the goalposts every single year. But looking at the schedule, ASU, BYU, Kansas at Baylor, don't know. Kansas State could be the type of team that could prevent. Listen, it's early, but again, just looking at all of these schedules for these different teams, anybody can conceivably beat anybody on any given week, and that does not speak or bode too well for the state of the conference in this playoff era.
I see we got to win 7 out of 8. That's how I'm looking at this new season now, right? First quarter's over, the first third of it. We got to win 7 of 8. I think we can do it.
My concern for Utah has always been who is going to make the plays. Now, Dallin Bentley has been a hell of a player early on in the season and looks to be, if he can stay healthy, kind of that next really good go-to tight end. But again, is Utah going to get to the point where they have to realize that to overcome their shortcomings on offense, like, do you have to sacrifice a very good player in Jackson Benny on defense if he proves to be the best dynamic big playmaker on your offense? That could conceivably be a question going forward, because I know fans are excited about Tobias Merriweather. He's a big kid, 6'5". 7-yard, 8-yard, 9-yard curls is not what Utah needs. And that's what Utah has done a lot of the first 4 weeks of the season. You need that 69-yard Willie Mays over the shoulder grab in the sunlight, and to bring your team back from the dead to really make this thing go. And I just don't know if Utah necessarily has those playmakers right now.
CK, going forward, let the folks know best place to go for your coverage and what you have on deck.
Oh, I always have a bunch of random stuff on deck. I know I'm not going to Hawaii to hang out with Trevor, so that's a bummer. But theathletic.com, lots of random stuff that I can't necessarily tease, but I know stuff that we will talk about on the show in the coming weeks.
Someday, we'll all be on the North Shore with Trevor. We'll see. Someday,
God willing.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you, CK, for giving us his entire 3 o'clock hour. Appreciate him as always. That brought to you by IFA Country Stores. With IFA's Step 4 Fall and Winter Lawn Food, you'll get stronger roots now and an early green up next spring. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move at IFA and IFA.coop. IFA Country Stores, helping to grow the things you love. Back on the other side, Trevor, Reilly, and I want to continue that conversation a little bit that we had on local football, right? High school, college level, whatever it may be. There's a rich football culture going on in Utah right now. And over the last decade, but a lot longer than that, obviously. We'll get to a little bit of that, some Utes in the NFL and more on the other side. Still to come in the show, Coach Bill Busch will stop by the program. He had stops all over college football, all over the country, so we'll get his perspective on that as well, all the locals showing out in the pros. Back on the other side, Trevor, Reilly, Porter Larson, filling in for Spence Checketts on The Drive on Utah's #1 sports talk. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. The show rolling along on a Wednesday afternoon. Big thanks to Chris Kamrani for hopping on the show. Sammy Mora of Ute Zone as well. Porter Larson here. Trevor Reilly over there. In that last segment with CK, we talked a little bit about some local Utah football culture. I'm not talking just Ute specifically or BYU specifically. I'm talking geographically. And I brought up a stat where Utah per capita, right, if you put the average at 1.0 and you leave SEC country, Utah produces the most NFL players in the country. Trevor Reilly, you're a guy who you played ball in California. You're a California kid, but you came to Utah to play football. Mm-hmm. You kind of had an idea, at least of the Utes football culture. What was your knowledge of the locale, the geography of Utah, the football that came out of the state, and how has it changed maybe your perspective since then?
DBs, receivers, and quarterbacks, generally speaking, back then from the state of Utah, not very good. And so that was one thing. Linemen, linebackers, good, decent tailbacks, tight ends. That was what it was known for, is a tough guy, bigger guy thing.
Polynesian boys.
There you go. And, some big farm boys and that type of stuff. But lack of speed. All right, now we talk, the population boom. COVID happened and everybody moved out here, and it was happening before that anyway. But now we have basically you got inner cities now. When you have inner cities, you're going to have poverty, which is going to bring people who train harder. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but that's at the bottom, and then you have the specialization at the very top end. I see Jackson Dart here on the television. The guys from he went to school in one of the nicest, I would say, public schools. Porter, is it the highest socioeconomic average income?
It's up there. That's for certain. One
of the highest public schools in the country for dollar per cap. So Utah has this incredible ecosystem, football ecosystem. Talk about a guy like Ray Stowers. Ray Stowers comes from Hawaii, comes here, comes with Urban, plays for Coach Witt. Now he's coaching Layton Christian Academy. Their basketball team had the toughest schedule in the country last year. Basketball.
Right.
And he's bringing in his own kids from all over the islands. They got Islanders coming in here now that are playing in high schools, and West High School's doing that.
You know who Layton Christian was playing 10 years ago?
I didn't even know they existed.
Me.
Yeah, out in the stick.
They were playing 1A and 2A schools, and to be honest, usually losing.
Wasatch Academy. I mean, you go down the line, so that's all scaled into football. And
Game has changed, yeah.
You got to mention Lavelle Edwards. Okay, he brings in the coaching staff. I mean, you just look, they're all over the NFL. I mean, Andy Reid, gosh dang. Then you got Norm Chow, and then you got all these guys, right? And then defense, you got Mad Dog Whittingham, and then you got Coach Witt, Kalani, Gary Anderson, and all these guys come from Coach Mack. So these two guys really set the tone here. Mac, I always say Mac brought the swag, dude. Mac's from L.A., okay? He's from Southgate, dude. And to come out here and bring that swag, and then, black guys started coming, Polynesians started coming a little bit more. And a lot of coaches at the high school level played or are from the staffs of these two guys.
Right.
And that say what you want about leaving a legacy. I mean, my goodness, that stat you gave, that's tremendous.
And this is a stat that, and I mentioned 1.41 is the number of NFL players per capita for Utah. When you look at other schools, it's really remarkable, or other states rather. I mean, you're tripling the state of Colorado, you're doubling Arizona, you're the schools that should be kind of your contenders. If you're Utah, Nevada, you're doubling the amount of players that are coming out of Nevada almost. You are more than doubling the players that come out of Idaho. And I'm not talking numbers. I'm talking per capita again.
Let me stop you right there. You know the greatest football player I've ever seen is?
Can I guess?
He's white. He's the greatest football player I've ever seen. Ever played against, ever seen in the weight room.
From Utah or
at the doctor's
college
office
here?
With him. Both. College. He's from Idaho. He's the greatest player I've ever seen. Physical, I'm talking about football player.
He's from Idaho?
Yeah.
It's not Luther? Luther's not from Idaho.
Taysom Hill.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I say football player, I think everybody gets what I'm saying. You could play him anywhere.
Yeah.
outside of offensive line. He could play D-end, safety, tight end, running back. So I think these areas, right, it's a good balance. You have the farm boy stuff and the tough guy stuff. It's always been a part of the mountain range.
Uh-huh.
And then you got the inner city stuff that's come now with all the, ethnicity and all the poverty that's come into play here. And then you have the high-end training, dude. You got a bunch of ex-pros, dude. Utah's a hot spot. Jonah Lomu died out here, man. This is a hot spot for pro athletes, especially Polynesians. And so they're training kids, dude. And I mentioned, Coach Solovai and West. We've mentioned Layton Christian Academy, Wasatch. But even Sky Ridge. I mean, where's Smith Stone from?
There, I believe. One of the ridges. Sky Ridge, North Ridge, Mountain Ridge.
And when you were younger, it used to be Olympus, and it used to be, who was the other one over there in that cove over there?
Skyline?
Skyline, that's it.
Yeah, there was 2 or 3 schools at most.
Well, supposedly Scally's boys over there. I've seen him warm up. Okay, he's supposed to be pretty good, moving up in the ranks there. He's in the 8th, 9th grade, I think.
A little off topic. Have you seen Eric Weddle's kid play?
Of course I have. He's from my hometown, man.
Trevor.
He's in Rancho Bernardo, dude.
Utah's going to have to fight to get him on campus.
My son's going to join his Pop Warner program next year.
Out there?
Yeah, he's playing for Escondido right now, but he's going for Eric. He's going to Rancho Bernardo play for Eric's boys. Unbelievable. We're going to get both those boys hopefully here at Utah. And by the way, I'm coming to see you, Mr. Ben Moa. Okay,
there you go.
We need your boy. We need to set up a charity fight or something. I'll fight you for your dang boy. We got to have him at Utah. Gosh dang it! And I'm just saying that tongue in cheek, and whoop my butt. But Ben, we got to have your son, man. We got to get the money right. We can't let your son go to Tennessee. Porter, are we really going to let Ben Moa's son leave town and go to Tennessee?
I know. How
about he goes for a year and then they can rent him? He'll fleece him like my man from UCLA, and then we'll get him back.
Get him back. Get some intel too.
Ben, we got to have your boy, dude. Come on, man.
Speaking of locals in the NFL, this guy is not a local to Utah, but came and played here. Steve Smith Sr. was among the wide receivers added to the Hall of Fame nominees list, at least.
As he should be. Savoy City. Or Steve Smith is from L.A., dude. Steve Smith is the greatest football player who's probably ever been through here. Could you disagree with that? Is anyone going to disagree with me on that one? Eric Weddle's on defense, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And this guy right here, we got Roy Jefferson, all right? He was pretty good. But Steve Smith.
Let's ask. You played in the NFL with Steve Smith, too.
I just know that Steve, all right, is 5'9" and change.
Yeah. And he
dominated.
And tell me how many, elite quarterbacks he had in the league.
Come on, man.
He played with.
Delhomme? Are you kidding me?
He played with an okay, Cam Newton was.
Dilfer was there, man.
Pretty good for a minute, but what Steve Smith Sr. did.
Steve Berline.
At 5'9", and I'm telling you, 5'9" is giving him some credit. I've met Steve Smith in person. He ain't 5'9".
One of the great punt
he ain't
returners.
5'9".
Dude, everyone forgets he's the greatest punt returner we ever had here. For a minute.
Hall of Famer. I think so.
I think if you ask the players of whoever played against him, yes.
He is top 10 in receptions, in yards, all over the map there, as you mentioned.
Fight.
In fight,
He'll
man.
knock you out, dude. I heard a story he might have knocked out Greg Hardy at practice.
Yeah. I heard that one as well.
I just know that Steve Smith, Mr. Smith.
Sir. Sir Smith.
I've talked to Steve Mr. Smith a few times. To me, he's what we need on offense. Okay, we need the next Steve Smith.
Yeah, you need the next Steve Smith, the next Chris mentioned it. You guys had 1,000 wide receiver in Drez.
Flipper Anderson's boy.
The next Covey. I don't care if you're 6'5" and can run down the field. Braden Covey didn't do that, but there's just got to be something there on the outside.
It's hard because I don't blame the coaches. We need more money. All right, we have a hard time recruiting receivers here. Everybody knows why. Those 5 and 7 seasons were crushing. And then we, they kind of build. We hired Norm Chow. We run the ball, and then we hire a few other, Brian. And so you just start running the ball a little bit. You're winning, but gosh dang, who the heck wants to come play receiver here when you're running the ball? So we need more money. And I say we, meaning the Utes. We got to get some more cheese. Texas Tech showed us why. Number 5, how good was he?
Yeah.
How about that catcher, across the middle, dude? Unbelievable, man.
The revenue stuff, the money stuff, you could see it from Texas Tech. I've never in
baseball, dude.
15 years of watching college football intently, I've never seen a Texas Tech defensive line up front look like that, play like that, get off the ball like that. I just had never seen it. So it's clearly paying dividends in that regard. Back to a little bit of that local conversation. One name that I didn't see on that Hall of Fame nominee list, and I'm not positive, I'm pretty sure he's eligible. He retired 5 years ago. It's one Eric Weddle.
Yeah, that's interesting. He should be. I mean, just look what he did for the Rams. How legendary is that, man?
Number one,
he pulls off the street and starts in a Super Bowl, separates his shoulder,
as
and
the green dot, by the way.
I think he led the team in tackles. Look that up. I think if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I mean, he was really good for them during the postseason run, signing on again late in the year to add on to what was a career that matches up statistically with like any defensive back to ever play the game. To add a Super Bowl title like that at the end of it, I think Eric Weddle's a Hall of Famer, no argument. But I think it's similarly to Steve Smith, just based on who they are, where they came from, and how kind of under the radar they live. I don't know what the committee's going to say. I think both of those guys are going to be pretty. Maybe they don't get in immediately, and it's going to be a fight. I think they should both get there, though.
Well, my only issue is that if Terrell Owens didn't get in on the first ballot, I mean, gosh dang, really?
Yeah.
Receiver's a tough nut to crack. Isaac Bruce just got in. Timmy Brown took some time to get in. And
can I give you a number there? You put those guys on a list, all of them are Hall of Famers. You know who's next as far as production, yards, touchdowns?
Is it Steve?
It's Steve Smith.
There you go.
He's right there along with 10 other guys, all of whom are either current Hall of Famers or Larry Fitzgerald, who is going to be a first ballot.
I just know, and I know Terrell. Okay, I've known Terrell for
just a little name drop there.
Well, I know him because of Reno Mahe. Okay,
right.
I'm at a nightclub in college. All right, this is a Harry-O's in Park City, 2010, 11?
Harry-O.
And I see next to me, hey, Reno, what's up, dude? And there's T.O., all right? And so I met him there, and then when I was working for Dion, we saw him all the time. Dude, he came down one day. Let me just tell you this. He came down one day we had an HBCU camp. We invited all the HBCU teams to come in. We had a combine. And so T.O. comes in for the day. We had it at Memorial Stadium, Veterans Memorial in Jackson. A lot of teams showed up. It was kind of a weird thing. It was like our league. They showed up to our combine. It was like a cool thing we did, regional thing. And so it gets into a 7-on-7 deal. And so T.O. hops in. Okay, he hops in, all right? You look this kid up, Bolden, right? Bolden was with us. He's in New England now. I think he's a corner. Could be a safety. He's just coming from Florida State, and now he's in the NFL. This is a heck of an athlete. T.O. destroyed him. When I say destroyed, he lit him up. He ran 5 routes on him. I think he caught 4 of them.
Wow.
And went deep twice.
I love it.
And so with Steve Smith, to bring it back to him, it's going to be tough for him to get in on the first ballot at receiver. They didn't let that guy in the first ballot. He was the second all-time leading receiver. Now there might have been some other pettiness. But you don't let Isaac Bruce took some time, man, Timmy Brown. And so if he's in that realm, it might be a decade. I hope not, because he competed his butt off.
Yeah. When you line the production up, the numbers up, everyone else that has the numbers Steve Smith has is a Hall of Famer, and rightfully so. And then you combine the fact that we just talked about. He is 5'8", 180 pounds. And, I mean, never had a premier quarterback. Jake Delhomme.
I'd like to fight Steve, huh? You get out of the car and you're like, I could look at this little guy in Steve Smith. I want some of that.
Right.
Steve
luck.
Is tough. He's just a tough guy.
He is, like, if you're ever around him, he is just built like a bowling ball, right? Just a little, I don't even know what to call him.
He's okay. The thing about Steve is he's like a running back body, but he has long arms. Okay, and so he has this amazing sprinter body that's like. Remember Maurice Green?
Yeah, Mo Green.
He kind of looks like Mo Green,
built a little bit like that.
And so he's just like this powerful.
If Steve Smith 20 years ago decided to be a boxer, that would have been fun to watch. All right, we're gonna get to Bill Busch on the other side. We got maybe a little trip down memory lane if Bill Busch remembers.
I've told the story before, but I got to tell him.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I'm sure he does.
Rich Rod is on the deck this week.
It's topical as well.
Sign stealing is always on the table.
That's very much on the top of minds in college football land. So we'll get to that with Bill Busch. Still to come in the show and in the afternoon today. Today's best with Chris Comrani. You'll hear more from him. You'll hear the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show. We played it last night live. You can hear it every Tuesday, but if you missed it, about 6 p.m. right here on the station. You'll hear it back this afternoon. This is The Drive. No Spence Checketts today. I am Porter Larson. That is Trevor Reilly. Back on the other side, former FBS coach, former Utah coach, Nebraska, LSU. He's been all over the map. He is one Bill Bush on the program on the other side. It's Utah's #1 sports talk, and of course, brought to you by our friends at IFA Country Stores. IFA Step 4 Fall and Winter Lawn Food. Stronger roots now and early green up next spring. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move at IFA and IFA.coop. Back on the other side on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Some more Fleetwood Mac bringing us back in on this Wednesday. It's been a theme for the day after our friend Sammy Mora joined us. Stevie Nicks, as we talked about, little former Salt Lake resident, just like our next guest, our friend Bill Bush, of course, a former coach here at the University of Utah, spent time on Urban Meyer's staff and part of the Alex Smith recruitment and more. Bill Bush, you were here once upon a time, but you've been everywhere, man.
It's been kind of fun. It's been a crazy life, to start out from a small town, Nebraska, to be at all the different places that I've been, and like I said, and to end up down at LSU for a national championship was a lot of fun. But just different places and traveling around. But there's no time that's more dear to my heart than the time that I spent at the University of Utah and the time I spent at Utah State. That state means a lot to me, and I was very fortunate to be, like I said, to be part of McBride's staff and then also been retained by Coach Meyer. So very blessed to have had a lot of time spent in that state. So very, very lucky and very humble about it, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, your time didn't overlap with our guy Trevor Reilly, who's in studio with us. But Trev, you remember a run-in with Coach Bill Bush at some point during your career?
Coach Bush, it's an honor to talk to you. I looked at your resume. Fantastic resume, by the way. Great career.
Oh, that's very kind of you. I had a lot of lucky breaks and good things going my way, and a lot of people gave me a shot. So I'm very, very happy about that.
I got to tell you, man, can you go back to 2011, Utah State versus Colorado State, ESPN game?
Yep.
I was playing Utah. We played BYU Friday night. We whooped them 50-something to 10 or something. And so my brother was playing for Colorado State. He was a safety. So I go up to the game on Saturday in Logan, and the coaching staff sees me, and we're talking, and they say, "Hey, so what do you know about this staff?" I said, "Well, Gary Anderson was at Utah." They said, "Really?" I said, "I assume they're running his defense." So I have to make a confession. Yeah, I've told this story before, but I helped them steal some signals. I'm not going to lie to you, Coach. I'm confessing my sins.
In-game, no technology.
No technology. It was on the sideline.
Nice job by you, I said. Yeah, anything I said, there's.
I apologize. I wouldn't have. I was in a different place, but I guess blood's thicker than water. I wanted my brother to get that win. But the funny part of the story is, Coach, the next morning, the Deseret News is a snapshot on the front page, and it's me in a Colorado State shirt with my arms up. Mind you, I'm playing at Utah at the time, and my brother running next to each other, running onto the field. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool like that. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that game, but I'm pretty cool at that. Yeah, we dropped a punt at about our 15-yard line. That's kind of what one of the things. There's always that wasn't the only thing. Trust me, there's all kinds of different things. We also had chances to score in overtime and weren't able to do it. So that was always.
Look at this guy. He remembers every detail. It's unbelievable, Coach.
I told you he'd remember.
It's unbelievable, Coach. I got to tell you, and everybody listen. The greatest college football team I've ever seen is that LSU team that won the national championship.
Well, I was very fortunate to be on it, and I was very, like I said, we had a lot of really good players, and it was one of the best staffs I've ever been on. Ed Ogeron was incredible to work for. It was 4th and 1 every day. Didn't matter if it was in March, February, or the day before you played Alabama. It didn't matter. And then working for someone like that is awesome because he just wants his stuff done right all the time at an extremely high level, and a lot of characteristics that was like that. Urban was like that. Kyle's like that. Spencer Life was that. Sometimes they do it in different ways, but all the great ones hold themselves to a ridiculous standard, and then you have to be able to match that. Either you have to be, you got to be able to accept that of how things are going to operate. And once you do, it's honestly life's easy to coach for those guys. You always say, "What was it like?" Working with Urban, and I was with him at Utah and at Ohio State for 1 year, and I'm like couldn't have been easier. Expectations are extremely high. Have all your stuff done exactly the way it's supposed to be done and get your unit ready to play. So that was all you had to do at that. And working for him was easy. So, and I see a lot of those characteristics in Kyle also at the University of Utah. So better times ahead, that's for sure.
Bill, since you are currently idle as far as the coaching stuff goes, I feel like I can ask you this question. It kind of goes back to Trevor's run-in, I guess, with you. If you tie if you connect the dots, everyone in football is connected in some form. There are, people trying to get info. There are people trying to get playbooks. There are brothers and cousins and coaches and people who've coached on rival staffs. The intel world of college football. Can you take me inside what that actually looks like at the collegiate level, especially after the year we saw with Michigan and the sign stealing drama? I think it's a really interesting conversation. And Bill attended to that. How much has the intel game in college football changed based on the simple addition of a headphone in the quarterback's helmet?
There is a change. No matter what, when you watch college football now, there is still a lot of signaling going on. You'll see it from the sideline because if you're a tempo team at all on either side, you can't go tempo offensively, and then that means if they're telling the quarterback what the play is, that means he has to tell the whole group what the team is. I mean the whole team, and they're lined up. So they're still getting all kinds of things from the sideline. So is things with defense. You don't have time if the other team is going somewhat fast to call something in defensively into your green dot helmet, and then all of a sudden he has to let everyone else know what the call is. And so there's different ways that that you're able to go about it. But I've always said this in the past, like that getting someone's playbook means absolutely nothing. I mean, we literally, we could have sent our playbook to Georgia the week before we played them. It wouldn't matter one thing. Like, okay, they have this. Okay, they have this book, and they have the. Well, what is it? When's it run? What's it called? What? I mean, it doesn't have anything to it. The number of playbooks that I obtained over my career from high-end schools of like I had everything that certain schools ran. That doesn't help you on game day. It really does, unless there's some sort of unique, because everything's a little bit generic in there. Now, if you have some other ways, there's always some things with intel that matters. Everyone's always looking across the field. Everyone's trying to get something. The thing with Michigan that really was discussed the most was that the sending of someone to another stadium to film the sidelines.
Right.
That was the part that came, but the part across the field that doesn't do anything as far as people are always trying to look of what they see and what's going on. That's why they have all the different things. And there was, like I said, I've been part of teams before where we had, all the unique 4 boxes and you'd hold things up like that. And there'd be sometimes we weren't even using those at all, ever during the game. And they were up every time, different looks, different this. So there was always some sort of a little bit of a gamesmanship with that going on. But you're always trying to, but that was always something. That the signal, if they can get it fast, and if you know what they're in, if you know they're running a bubble screen, if you know they're running a tunnel screen, if you know they're taking a shot deep on defense, and you know that with enough time to make an adjustment, that's pretty cool. It can help you. But a lot of times things are going so fast that you're just trying to get everybody lined up and ready to go. So generally, the team that blocks and tackles better usually is what ends up winning the game.
What teams are you following this year? That's been everywhere. What are some teams that you're following, and any outlook for those teams?
Oh man, it's insane. I'll watch football from come on here at 11 a.m. Central Time, and I'm usually up till about 2. Like the other night, it was Michigan State, USC till about 1:45 in the morning till that one got over. So I'm following everybody, looking at watching stuff. I don't know if this coaching career of mine is over yet, so I always kind of so I'm texting myself, taking notes on all the different games. But I follow every place that I have friends at. I've got friends on the Ole Miss staff, so I follow them close. Obviously, I follow Utah extremely close. I have a lot of friends on the staff. I follow BYU because I have friends on their staff, so I'm following what they look like, what's going on. I follow, like I said, still follow LSU. I still follow I follow Rutgers. I love following right now. My team that I love following the most is Indiana. I mean, the fact that Cignetti has gone 15-2 off a 3-9 team and a fired coach, and he came in and they just beat a number 9th ranked team by 53 points. That's pretty amazing because no one would ever said that when he took the job. I think he might go 15-2. No, that's never. So those games, always interest me a lot. But I really enjoy the I would say mid-level. So I watch a lot of non-group of 4 games. So I'm watching Colorado State. I loved watching the UCLA New Mexico game. Jason Eck, the head coach at New Mexico, is a friend of mine. So watching him and how physical they played and what they did. So I'm watching a bunch of those. I got friends that the head coach, Spencer, out at Boise, is a friend of mine. So I'm following them. So they always have the major ones that are super obvious. But then it's fun to watch the ones that, because I spent time coaching, in the WAC and Mountain West. And so I really, really enjoy a game kicking off at 10 a.m. and it's San Jose State, Nevada. I'm going to stay up all night and watch that.
Well, I got to ask you a question. We should get a football team here at Utah Valley. You should come be the head coach. I'll be the general manager. We'll put it together before next season. You sound hungry,
I'm
man.
all for that. Yeah, I think it'd be awesome. Yeah, I think it'd be a great situation.
So you'd be interested in that. I was talking to the guy. Okay, Bryce, is that his name? Who does play-by-play for Utah Valley?
Our guy Bryce over at ESPN, the Fan.
There it is. Okay, and he was saying there's a couple guys down there. They got some money. They want a team. I said, well, we should talk about that. We need a coach. You might be the guy. All right, you looking for a job? You could be the head coach.
Yeah. I'm available right now.
And
I can be there tomorrow.
There we go.
And in today's age, Trevor, we'll expand on this over the next couple of days for sure, and with Bill a little bit. But in today's age, there was a time when at UVU not having a football program was because of cost, right? Well, now, man, you might want to go get a football team because of what it will cost you not to have one.
We just put a team together for $20,000. We're 4-1. All right, we'll beat a D3 and some JCs, but if you scale it, we can do it cheap. They got facilities there. We need some cash and we need some coaches.
Well, we got to start. We got to start.
When you have what's going on now, and in essence, pretty quick, there's going to be private equity in all colleges because the model is still pretty, it's not sustainable. There really is not a big change in the collectives. They're still able to push things through, and it's just that's still a big part of it. So the rev share of the $20.5 million, every school basically can handle it that are in certain conferences. The Power Four conferences, other ones really can't. But what happens now is there can be someone that's just like, you know what, this is a successful business person, and I'd like to have a football team. Well, it's really hard to have a football team in the NFL. There's 32 teams, and they're worth $6 to $10 billion. But someone can just say, you know what, I'd like to be a big part of, you name the school, and all of a sudden they can get involved. FedEx is very involved at Memphis. There's different places that they can do this. So when you talk about, can someone build something up really fast? Can you take a program and say, hey, in 10 years we'd like to be FCS, and we have no team right now? You can. If you have the finances.
Sure, I think we could do it in 2. Remember,
you can do it pretty quick.
Hey, you know this. You work down south. Money talks down there. Okay, you and I both work down there, and you can go down there and get players if you got cash. They'll come.
Yeah, if you have and then you have the people that want to do it, run things the right way. But that's the part where there's just people kind of like, you know what? I don't need a yacht. I don't need this. What I really like to do is have a football team, and I can't get one in the NFL because maybe I don't have that $8 billion to pay. But I'd like to be part of it, and this is something that I can get pretty heavily invested for. You name the number, but it'd be in the millions, obviously, and all of a sudden could be a lot of fun. But you will see private equity slowly keep creeping into even to major places, because all of a sudden there's people that like I said, that have ridiculous money that want to get involved. I mean, all of a sudden, if you're the president of Amazon, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I want to get involved in this. You can do it, and it works. And it used to be just facilities. Oregon went from really nothing. They were a non-factor in everything, and all of a sudden Phil Knight kind of said, you know what, we are going to be really good. So watch this. They did it with facilities by making things so insane that it was great for the kids. And then now it's like, okay, we have all that, but also we can legally, pay players. And now things are going very, very well for them. They're an elite program every year because of that. And it'd be very hard to say that they wouldn't be. If you just said, Phil Knight, no big deal. No, Nike's a really big deal.
Yeah. Phil Knight kind of gave you a little bit of I don't want to say blueprint, because it was different. As you mentioned, it was with the facilities and the equipment and the access.
They were paying dudes over there too now. Let's not get that twisted.
But no, it was a blueprint in that regard. And hey, you can even go back to Southern Methodist University, who they didn't have nothing going until a few bagmen back in the 70s and 80s, right? And then they were contending for championships. Now, they may have been a little premature in that and got hit for it, but
they just got caught. And I think Coach knows what I'm talking about. Not everybody cheats, okay? But the teams that do, some of them get caught, some of them don't. What I got to tell you, though, Porter, is we need to save this clip, all right? That's the sales pitch right there. Coach, you just made the pitch.
Send it to UVU's director.
And just to piggyback off that, a question off that, do you see that happening at Utah anytime soon? Are somebody going to step in here, and we need $20 million more dollars? I know someone said, well, everybody needs that. We really got a program that will work. We need some more. Do you see that happen at Utah? What do you think?
Well, it's always sometimes it's pretty simple to discuss it. And if you heard Coach Saban say, I think it was an interview I read it. I didn't hear him say it, but he talked about in the SEC. There's only two teams that have generational money that can keep up, and that's Texas and Texas A&M. They're way ahead of everyone else in that league. They're ahead of Alabama. They're ahead of Georgia. They're ahead of all different teams. Auburn said that, and that was a direct quote from the guy who knows more about football than anybody does. So to have that person who is involved with it, but I think right now all administrations are extremely open to all revenue streams, and no one's going to be like, oh, there's certain things that you can't get yourself involved in with legalities of gambling and different stuff of that nature. But every administration is looking very hard on how can we fundraise, what can it be in private equity, who can we get involved with this. So I don't have the exact a name at Utah, but I know that it would be something I'm sure would be welcomed, like it's welcomed everywhere. It's very clear at the University of Nebraska. Was the last place that I coached at. That they have a collective here, and there is a family here that's extremely successful. I don't know. I don't want to throw the numbers, but multi-billions probably. And they run Sandhills Global, and that's who runs the collective. And they're very involved. And they get very involved also with not just, but they get involved in the level of donation. They get involved in the level of all the access to their lawyers, all their access to anything that has to be in an incredible functioning business. They have the access to that. So Nebraska's been very helped by someone just like you're talking about, and that's the Pede family at Sandhills Global. So if there's someone like that, for sure they will have full access to schools, and I'd love to see it at Utah if that's something that can help Kyle or whatever gets time for Morgan to take over. I'd love to see it. Well,
and the reality is, and now I think there's always going to be outliers where you have a young, plucky, tough team that wins a bunch of games and has an outlier year. But to compete year in, year out in a now $1 trillion business, you need a billionaire. You need a billionaire. So that's kind of where we're at. Bill Bush, I appreciate your time as always. We'll catch up throughout the season.
I appreciate that. How are we doing? How are our youths, Ray? They're going to be able to rebound from this? I got a chance to watch the game. I was at an event, but I got a chance to watch most. So they're going to be able to get themselves back together here and get going? I think so. I think Texas Tech is good, and I think that's really good. that's the real story of Saturday. Like I said, I was able to watch probably 80% of it. A few things I didn't catch a lot of the last 10 minutes of the game because there's other things I had to do. But I think they'll rebound very, very well. There's games like that. You just have games. Sometimes things don't go quite right. So I know Coach Whittingham well enough and those guys over there, and they'll get things turned around real quick. So be excited to see them back and rolling real fast.
Hey, Coach, can you imagine? I can only imagine the look on your face when you looked at the box score. You didn't catch the last 10 minutes and you saw the final score. Right. What were you thinking, man? What the freak?
Oh, yeah. I was like, I'm watching, I think, was it 10-3 at half? And if I remember, that was the score, I believe. I'm watching. But all of a sudden, it's 30. I'm like, what happened? And so, so I didn't, so the last part of it to see what took place. So I didn't, like I said, I didn't get a chance to see that, but I watched a good piece of it, and then I saw their quarterback was out, obviously, and the other quarterback came in and played well, and they're a good team. And there's a team, if you talk to somebody that says, put your money where your mouth is, they have billionaires, they got Double Eagle energy. And just the example, I don't think they've been to the College World Series. I don't think they'd ever been to the College World Series in softball, and they went and paid the best pitcher there was. And then this year they were in the finals. They were one game away from being national champions, because they went and got the best pitcher in softball. And they did the same thing in football. So there's someone that's an outpost. Texas Tech. You ever been to Lubbock before? That's an outpost. You're out in the middle of nowhere, and they found a way because of the finances to put things together in a very good, and they have a great coach too, but they put it together very well.
It is the name of the game in today's college sports. Bill, appreciate your time as always.
You guys are great. Thanks, guys.
Ryan from the Dish Pros now. If you want to watch your Utes this weekend, not home. They're out on the road all the way out in Morgantown across the country. You're going to need to get your television watching experience dialed in or your streaming service. Ryan, how can you help the folks out?
We can, and we've got some very cool offers right now with internet and with satellite TV. And guys, this allows you to get out of that cable bundle, and this is where it really helps customers because there's so many different options out there as far as internet. You're not stuck with one provider, and I'll tell you, Dish has got the best promotion I've ever seen in all the years I've been in business. And with that saying, guys, 3 months free of their top package for free. You get movie channels. You get the NFL Red Zone. We'll get you a 2-year promotion of a 2-year price guarantee, and we'll throw in dinner at JCW's and have you installed as early as next day. Call us up and upgrade. Ask about the internet solutions. Guys, if you're spending more than $70 a month and you've got an internet service that's maybe not happy, very making your family happy, there's a lot of options. Just call us and let us work our magic. And be one of the many that we save $100+ a month. You just got to call 424-DISH. It's 801-424-DISH.
801-424-DISH. Call Ryan and the folks at the Dish Professionals to get your television watching experience dialed in. Hey, how about our friends at Advanced Windows? You know our friend Nate Orchard, yeah?
Of course I do. I'm going to dinner with him tomorrow night.
Advanced Windows and advancedwindows.com, $2,500 off the fall special when you get 10 windows or more. And as we've talked about, yeah, Nate Orchard's a former Ute. He's an NFL player. I can also tell you he's just a good dude. He's just a nice guy.
Nate is stand-up. I've known him since he was 16. Okay, he used to come to frat parties at my, not frat parties. He used to come to my cousin's house, and he's always been a good kid. He married his high school sweetheart. He's got a great family. Come support Nate Orchard. He's the mayor of Salt Lake City.
801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100 to get that discount. $2,500 off when you get 10 windows or more by mentioning us here at ESPN 700. And you don't have to lock that in today. You don't have to purchase that today. You just get to get on their books. You got to get in, get their consultation, maybe schedule that appointment for way out in the summer when you can get the windows out and it's part of your plan. It's Advanced Windows and advancedwindows.com. Call Jake and Nate over at Advanced Windows. Back on the other side, a little bit more with Trevor, Reilly, and I. We're talking Utah football. We're talking Big 12, a little bit of NFL Hall of Fame chatter that we got to earlier on in the show. Still to come, Scott Mitchell and Trevor chatted a little bit earlier today. We'll replay that, and a replay of the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show. If you missed the show yesterday, you can catch it live each and every Tuesday. Kyle Whittingham and Bill Reilly recapping the Texas Tech game and looking forward to the West Virginia matchup. That comes your way sharp at 6 p.m. right here on Utah's #1 sports talk. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. 4 o'clock hour rolling along on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Porter Larson here. Trevor Reilly alongside me for the afternoon. Of course, with us two in studio, we're going to talk mostly football. I heard your conversation earlier with Scott Mitchell, the rattlesnake.
Yeah.
A little background on the background of Trevor Reilly's, I guess, your only nickname, really.
Yeah, well, so I'm originally a hooper. Okay, my dad played college hoops. My brother played college hoops.
Where did they play?
My dad started out at Utah with Jerry Pym.
Okay.
1980 class. He was going to come here. He went on his mission, and then he came back and played at BYU Hawaii.
Okay.
He was an NAIA player. They had a good team, though. They had some pros out there. Obviously, they recruit different. And my brother kind of started out here, did the same thing. And so I played a lot of sports. And I could move, right? But I never played D-line.
Mm-hmm.
So I get here, and John P. says, you're a D-lineman. He says, you're the next Paul Kruger.
What?
Have you seen Paul's mom and dad? My parents aren't built like that. Paul's built to be a lineman. Right?
Uh-huh.
Paul Bunyan, gosh dang it. I'm more of a surfer body. I'm 32-inch waist, dude. I'm not big. So I had to get around people, and this guy, Caleb Schlotteroff, was a starting left guard. Real smart guy. We ended up playing together on the Jets for an off season. Spent a weekend going to Gettysburg in a non-romantic way. It was interesting. But anyways, we do one-on-ones, and they have him set at tackle. He's a backup tackle behind you. Remember Zane Beatles?
Mm-hmm. Decent player of his own right.
Exactly. And I'm about 210, and these guys are 300-pounders, and they smell bad, and they're just kind of big brutes.
They're mean.
They're mean guys, so I'm going to avoid contact and still get the job. And so I'm moving around, and I'm dicing, and I'm in and out.
You're slithery.
I'm slithering, right, on the one-on-one reps. And, for me, it's just a, crossover in and out, right? And so I'm beating these guys, and Slaughterhoff can't block me. He's a guard. So I'm eating his lunch daily. And finally he says, oh, you're the Rattler, man. You're like a rattlesnake. And then Kalani heard it, and then he started calling me the Rattler, and it was whatever.
I think it fits.
Yeah, I don't really lean into it, but I guess they call me the Rattler when they see me around, the old players.
I'll just say this, and like a rattlesnake, you don't scare me. You're a nice guy. You're a good friend.
I'm trying to be, okay.
But I'm telling you,
thank you.
If you were backed into a corner, I don't know if I'd want to be around like a rattlesnake.
Most of the time I'm going to fight to the death.
There you go.
See, I said most of the time. Sometimes I don't want to do that, but the point is I was trained that way. I had great coaches. My high school coach is a legend. My OC gave Urban Meyer his first job at Colorado State. Then I came for Kyle Whittingham. Then I go to see Rex Ryan and Dennis Thurman. Then I go hang out with Belichick for a couple seasons, whatever. And then it's back to Kyle as a coach, and then Deion Sanders. So I've had a unique opportunity to have some great men impact me and teach me the right way how to win, dude. I know how to get it done if we need to get it done, dude.
And it's not unique to you. There's a lot of players who have been coached by multiple really good coaches. It's kind of luck of the draw, really, where you get drafted, where you get signed, where you decide to go as a 17-year-old sometimes, right? But man, you could write a book just based on the coaches you've been around.
Not to mention Todd Bowles. You're about ready to win a Super Bowl this year.
You mentioned Mike Leach earlier.
Mike Leach. I mean, I've had God's been good to me, and sometimes I guess you can find yourself in those situations, at least as an athlete, because like-minded people seem to be attracted to things they like, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some of that there, and I attribute that to my coaches as a youth. Rick Mazzetti, he's the director of economic development at Caesars Harris Casino down in Rincon Indian Reservation. That was my Pop Warner coach, dude. So I all we talked about, to bring it full circle, the state of Utah having a tremendous now imprint or fingerprint on the NFL. This is why. You got unbelievable guys that are coaching youth football, man. In this state specifically, who've been trained by great coaches like Urban and like Coach Witt and Ron and Coach Lavelle and Sataki. These guys are legends of the game. And don't forget, dude, there's guys who coach Pop Warner here who played for Andy Reid.
Right.
A lot of them.
My little cousins, they're little twerps. They're not serious football players yet. They're just having fun. They're learning, right? They're pulling flags. They're figuring out what defensive terms mean. But guess who's their coach?
Who?
Haloti Ngata.
Come on, dude. Are you
right?
kidding me?
Just hanging out. Like, just coaching little fellas.
About, man. Who gets that opportunity? I worked out with that guy. He did a Turkish. I not a split squat, Turkish. He took a barbell with 45-pound weight on each side.
Okay.
And was standing up over his head, as you can see this, right? Keeps his arm locked, right? And goes down onto the floor. So he's laying down without moving his arm and then gets back up.
Without it, in just one arm.
One arm,
by
dude.
the way.
And then he just went underneath the bow suit, jumped up, and two-hand mashed a dunk like it was nothing.
Haloti, and he's one guy that I think a lot of people forget about a little bit locally because he didn't go to school here. He went to Oregon.
Yeah, he did.
But he's a Highland High guy, and he is – we talked about the best football players to ever come out of Utah. We usually talk about college guys. He's right there with any of the players that you want to mention, even though he didn't stay here.
His game, and in basketball we kind of say this, but his game was so tight that even though he went to Oregon, we let him come work out at our facility in the off season. This is why he was playing, dude. This dude was training. That's another one. I got to watch Haloti train. He used to train with us. He in the weight room with us. I'm talking 2012, 2013, on the field doing drills, man. So the state of Utah is a special place. I mean, Gary Anderson's down at BYU. Who would have ever thought that, man? Really? But it just goes to show you these guys all respect that culture here. This is a football culture. I had a unique opportunity to meet with Bronson Kafusi, and they got a players association they've started down there for ex-players. We have one here with me. We're going out to dinner on me, Sly, Matt Martinez, Jesse Boone, Nate Orchard. But we're looking to link everything together, right? We're going to start. We did a Make-A-Wish Foundation event with the BYU guys 2 weeks ago.
Love it.
Everybody got together. So just again, full circle. That article that really makes me feel good because it's true. I witnessed it. It's true.
Yeah, it's something that you can see in Utah's football culture. And hey, just turn on an NFL game in any given Sunday and look at the players, not just from Utah, but who went to high school at Utah and then went to Stanford or went to Oregon or went to Alabama.
Dude, Simi Fehoko I played church ball against him when he just got back from his mission.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it was me and Reno Mahe. We were neighbors. We had a team. Our center was 6'10", played at Charleston Southern. And we had a tennis player from the University of Utah, C.J. Adamson. We were cooking everybody. And then this kid gets off his mission, Simi Fehoko. He might still be playing, by the way.
I think he is.
He was 360 dunking, dude. And I was like, bro, you need to be a DN, man. Forget receiver. I said, gosh dang, you're a Polynesian. Fajoko's, I know VJ. I know Whitley. Those guys are thugs, man. But anyways, the whole state, to your point, is full of talent. It's full of great coaches. And, I'm going on and on about it because that makes me feel good. And you talk to people across the country about I can point to that article. This is all you need to know about what goes on in the state of Utah football.
That's Trevor Reilly. Speaking of locals in the NFL, he came to Utah and then spent a good old half decade or so in the NFL with the Patriots and more. How about another one? Scott Mitchell, the Springville's own.
Red Devils, is that right?
I think they are. The Springville Devils, and then, of course, a Miami Dolphin, a Detroit Lion, and more. How about Scott Mitchell with Trevor Reilly? That comes your way next, and then more. Kyle Whittingham Coach's Show still to come later on the station. This is The Drive. Today with myself, Porter Larson, and that guy, Trevor Reilly, on Utah's #1 Sports Talk in your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. That'll do it for Trevor, Reilly, and I on this Wednesday afternoon. The Rattlesnake.
Yeah, man.
Back with me tomorrow.
I just never leaned into the nickname. I just let it happen. It still
I don't
feels
think-
weird. People call me. I still say what's up, but
I don't think you can lean into a nickname, or it doesn't really work.
okay, there you go.
Right? It has to be like, as you explained, it has to come about authentically
Yeah, man.
and stay authentically, or else it's more of like a wanted title. Like I hear some guys that like want their own nickname, and you can't do that.
It's like when you start campaigning for your own Heisman. They can't do that.
Yeah.
Or to make an all-star team. I've seen that. That's kind of atrocious. And all due respect to anyone who's done that, it's just not my thing. I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah, it's gotta come organically, if you ask me.
Well, as a hipster that I am, I guess I'm in that age group where I guess it matters. But that's not how I'm from a marine town, dude, San Diego. You don't do that stuff. You line up and you get it done.
Speaking of lining up and getting it done, we're gonna do the same thing tomorrow. Trevor and I, on the show with us tomorrow, we're gonna have Bryce on, our guy from old ESPN, The Fan,
man.
our UVU fellow.
We're gonna talk a little UVU football.
We
with
are.
Mr. Bill Bush and Trevor Reilly possibly running the show.
I wanna get more of your thoughts on that, because listen,
He's agreed and tentatively. You heard him. So we already have a head coach. You heard that, right?
I think Bill, it was a soft commit at
It was a
least.
soft commit, and according to him, these are his words. He's not actively coaching him. It gives us all the leverage in the world. We can pay him something small, but he'll come out for that.
We'll just offer him a spot on the show.
All right, you're director of media relations. All right,
I got your coach's show for
our
you.
man Bryce is going to be in charge of. What can you do for us? You can call the game.
Yeah,
We already got half a crew, dude.
I'll hang out on your sideline for you.
Here's what we need. We need a cafeteria. I can feed these kids, all right? We need some cheese. I can pay them. We got housing everywhere. I've seen that, but an apartment complex would be nice. I could house them all in one place. And then let us, I need a Murphy bed.
There you go. just a Murphy bed in an office
I
for
need a
Trevor.
Murphy
He's
bed,
set.
some food. But the point is that, I'd love to talk to Bryce about UVU. UVU's been in the news recently, not for anything good, but just my sister was a thrower there. My brother-in-law was a thrower there. They got great facilities, man. They got an opportunity to really take off. They're spending money.
Good facilities, a big campus, and a big student body. And like I said, at a certain point, yes, football is the most expensive sport to have. It's kind of the most expensive sport not to have as well, if that
you
makes
win,
sense.
dude.
Yeah.
If you win, it's easier to win at than it is in basketball in a way.
And look around at the conversation we just had about all the players that are in Utah, ready to play football, and are ready to come to Utah to play football.
How about Liberty College?
Capitalize on it.
You ever heard of Liberty College 10 years
Capitalize
ago?
on it.
10, 15 years ago. Who
What
was
were-
Liberty?
FCS, if that.
I don't even know if they had a team, dude. And if you get organized, people will come to facilities and money, and they will come for good coaching. That's why a good coach. Think about Colorado. We go to Colorado, we start winning.
Yep.
Right? Now, we haven't won anything big there, but the point is that before it was a dumpster fire. You bring in some cheese, you bring in some staff. So, anyways, talking to UVU, Bryce would be nice about UVU. I know they got, we talked earlier, Cale Sanderson. I'd love to see him back retiring here as wrestling coach someday.
Right?
Or maybe liaison or something.
And hey, people want to live here as well. That's the other part of this conversation that continues to move in Utah's direction. That's going to do it for us today on The Drive with Porter and Trevor this time around. On the show tomorrow, we mentioned it, Bryce Larson's going to join the show. No relation. He is the voice of UVU athletics on ESPN Plus and more. We're going to chat with our friend Sam Bruckhouse of Sumer Sports. I think we may hear from Robert Rojo Johnson. And then Devin Dampier is on the station tomorrow as well. You'll hear that conversation live, and we'll replay it later on in the afternoon before Thursday night football as well. Trev, thanks, my man.
It's been a